Max opened his eyes and saw nothing but darkness. He was no longer in the room he was familiar with, nor was he lying on the bed he was familiar with. He vaguely remembered that it was his 18th birthday the previous night, and he had played all night with his family and friends. He had originally planned to wake up early to pack up his belongings. After all, he was already 18 years old, and it was time for him to move out and live on his own. However, the sudden change in his surroundings had left Max rather confused. He felt as if he was immersed in honey, as his surroundings were extremely sticky. It reminded him of whenever he finished playing basketball with his partner. His body would be covered in sweat, drenched without even taking a bath, and his clothes would stick to his body. Nevertheless, what baffled Max even more was that even though he was in such a situation, his heart was filled with a sense of relief. Oddly enough, he felt that as long as he immersed in the sticky fluid around him, he was absolutely safe. Max was extremely puzzled. He was experiencing two completely contradictory emotions, after all. However, there was nothing he could do to leave his situation. After all, when he tried to stretch his limbs earlier, his body did not respond at all. It was not that he was being restrained, rather, none of his limbs had responded. At this moment, Max was a little flustered. A suspicion arose within his heart. Could I be paralyzed, or could I have drunk so much last night that I lost control over my motor functions? But that's impossible. My sense of touch is still intact. It's clear that my nerves are not paralyzed. Moreover, I'm not a light drinker. There's no way that a couple of cans of beer would paralyze my bodily functions. Max was certain that the current situation he was in was very likely related to the birthday bash last night. After all, it was the most recent memory he had. Before he knew it, he was stuck in his current predicament, and this was obviously not his parents' home. His parents loved him very much, and obviously, they would not play such a cruel joke on him. So what's the reason for this sudden development? Max's heart suddenly froze. In the face of such an unknown situation, he decided that he needed to gather information about his surroundings. Suddenly, a series of explosions rang out. A strong explosion accompanied by a violent shockwave swept through everything in the surroundings. Max's heart was filled with panic. An explosion, could it be a terrorist attack? However, before Max could come to a conclusion, a series of feral roars could be heard along with the explosion. Max was very surprised. He could actually understand those beast-like roars. Damn you, Adams. You damn be***starred, Mother Tiamat will not forgive you. Max listened carefully. To his surprise, other than the sound of the voice, he also heard a series of hissing sounds. This was exactly the same feeling he had when he took a plane back in the past. Am I in the sky? Max thought to himself. Clearly, two names were mentioned by the voice earlier. Adams and Mother Tiamat. Max did not know who Adams was, but he vaguely recalled that Tiamat was the mother of the vile chromatic dragons of legend. Why would someone mention her name? Not only that, she was even addressed as the Mother Goddess. Could the speaker be one of the legendary chromatic dragons? Max felt that it was ridiculous, but he still chose to believe the speaker's words. After all, he was located in a strange place, and he could not see a single thing. This made him think of another possibility, the possibility of rebirth. Max was an avid reader of web novels, and their creativity had always fascinated him. At present, the concept of transmigration and rebirth was especially popular. Faced with these unknown circumstances, Max felt that he was most likely reborn. As for what he was reborn as, Max had some guesses in his mind. However, in that moment, he felt it necessary to listen to the conversations of the individuals outside. He would most likely gain some valuable information from them. Max continued to listen. Not long after, several bursts of explosions, that felt stronger than the explosion of missiles, were unleashed. This made Max wonder whether he was caught in a war zone. Another loud roar like that of a ferocious beast rang out. Agatha, just obey me. The tone was extremely vulgar, and Max frowned when he heard it. This. Could the other party be seeking for her hand in marriage? Are all courtship between dragons so wild? Firing shots akin to cannonballs at the slightest disagreement. At this moment the voice sounded again. Agatha, as long as you give me the egg in your hand, I will spare you. Otherwise, you will enter an eternal slumber today. Adams, you vile and cunning black dragon. As a fellow chromatic dragon, you are also under the protection of the mother goddess Tiamat. How dare you come and snatch my child? Your actions are not worthy of being a chromatic dragon. The chromatic dragon mother will definitely punish you. What a load of nonsense. Are you going to hand it over, or should I send you to your demise? Humph, if you won't hand it over willingly, I'll grab it by force. I believe that those from the human alliance would want nothing more than to receive your corpse, especially those dragon slayers. I bet they'll love it. By selling your corpse and egg to the human alliance, I'll definitely earn a fortune. What? You dare team up with the dragon slayers? Damn it. You have no right to be a part of the chromatic dragons. Agatha was extremely anxious at this moment. She hugged the dragon egg in her arms tightly and flew even faster. If it was not for the fact that red dragons were adept at aerial maneuvers, the damned black dragon would definitely have already caught up to her. She was a 3,000-year-old pure-blooded red dragon. Moreover, she was an ancient red dragon that had successfully transitioned during her prime. Her lifespan was at least 10,000 years long. She was an extremely rare existence in the entire dragon race. After all, most dragons were only able to transition into ancient dragon when they were in the late stages of their life. However, Agatha had successfully transitioned into an ancient dragon during her prime. This immediately attracted the attention of many people. Dragons were already at the top of the biological chain, and it was extremely difficult for them to reproduce. However, as a 3,000-year-old dragon, Agatha had miraculously transitioned into an ancient dragon. Once the dragon eggs she gave birth to hatched, there was a 50% chance that they would be born as ancient dragons. However, something unexpected happened. The extremely old black dragon, Adams, had set his sights on the first dragon egg that she had hatched after transitioning into an ancient dragon.
Hey everyone, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy the audiobooks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support us further, consider becoming a Patreon member. As a member, you'll gain the ability to request the next part of a novel audiobook I've uploaded, depending on your Patreon tier.
Within the dragon egg. While the black dragon Adams and the red dragon Agatha faced off against one another, Max reiterated the important information that they had imparted. Needless to say, Max was completely shocked. He had never expected that he would actually be reborn. Furthermore, he was reborn as a chromatic dragon. Although he did not know what attribute he belonged to, this did not prevent Max from feeling ecstatic. A dragon. I am a dragon. Although the chromatic dragons were described as evil beings in his current incarnation, this did not stop humans from worshipping their power. After all, they were mythical creatures. Who among humans did not dream of obtaining such power? Such a dream had been made into reality for Max, as he had become an honest-to-God dragon. However, he was still in his egg, and he was caught in a rather awkward predicament. He finally understood why his surroundings were cloaked in darkness. It turned out that he was stuck within a dragon egg. However, he still could not figure out why he could not move his limbs. Is this how it's meant to be? Max subconsciously thought about his future as a dragon. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded in his mind. Ding dong, detected that the host is facing an emergency. Super evolution system activated. Ding dong, detected that the host's life is in extreme danger. Novice rescue gift bag awarded. Emergency quest triggered. Host Max, your mother, the dragon Agatha's strength has been greatly depleted due to your birth. Coupled with the attack of the black dragon, Adams, she is currently in a life-threatening situation. As the dragon egg she has given birth to, please make your choice. 1. I am still an egg. Even if I want to help, I am still an egg. Ignore the situation. Reward: Dragon egg status extended by 30 years, and probability of premature death increased by 300%. 2. Break out of the egg and join the battle. Directly participating in the battle. Reward: Probability of death increased by 300%. Immediately transform into an ancient dragon level undead dragon after death, and suffer the disgust of the chromatic dragon mother, Tiamat. 3. Call out my true name, use my own magic essence to initiate a battle of existence with the other party. The existences will connect to the past and the future, and they will fight in origin space with their strongest form. The victor will plunder all of the loser's possessions. Summon your true name and initiate a battle of existence. Reward: Divine Tier Race Heroic Tribe Random Template Set. Looking at the virtual interface that suddenly appeared in front of him, Max immediately understood what this was. A system. Sure enough, every transmigrator and every reincarnated person would have a system. Max's heart was filled with a maelstrom of emotions. However, upon reading the information that was displayed on the virtual interface, he was instantly dumbfounded. His mother, the ancient red dragon Agatha, actually had her strength greatly reduced because of his birth. Now her life is in danger. Max was suddenly nervous. After all, he was currently a dragon egg. If his mother's life was in danger, he too would fall in harm's way. Is this a joke? I managed to reincarnate into a dragon, and now I'm going to die. I'm going to die while I'm in an egg. I'm going to be the laughingstock of all the other transmigrators if this is the case. This kind of result was most unacceptable to Max. In order to live, Max immediately calmed down his nervous heart. He stared long and hard at the virtual interface in front of him. In that moment, Max was only an egg, and in order to break the deadlock before him, the system's help was indispensable. Max directly eliminated the first option. He did not even consider the option. Ignore the situation and remain as an egg. Had the system not appeared, it would be his most likely option. However, with other options now opened up to him, there was no way he would take it. A 30-year extension in the dragon egg state. A 300% increase in the probability of dying. What a joke. I'd rather die. Skimming through this option, he then looked at the second option. Breaking out of the egg and joining the battle. Come on, I'm only an egg. Even if I broke out of the egg, I would only have a young dragon's strength. How on earth can I go against atoms? The level of a dragon is determined by their age. The older the dragon, the stronger it is. Ancient dragons and above are excluded from this ranking, but in general, this is their hierarchy: dragon hatchling, young dragon, teen dragon, young adult dragon, old adult dragon, old dragon, archaic dragon, ancient dragon, upper ancient dragon, immemorial dragon, dragon god. Moreover, the rewards had clearly stated that the probability of death for breaking out of the egg was increased by 300%. What was the difference between this and certain death? Although he could immediately transform into an ancient dragon-level undead dragon after death, this race was obviously not acknowledged by the chromatic mother dragon, Tiamat. As a newcomer to this foreign world, why would he want to go out on his own when he had such an obvious backer to rely on? Max did not completely discount the option, however. Should the situation necessitate it, he would consider the option once more. He continued to look down. It was then that he spotted the third option, and Max could not really understand it. He knew of his true name. After all, his true name had already appeared in his mind without even consciously thinking about it. He also understood that if were to lose the battle of existence, he would have all his possessions robbed by the other party. However, the battle of existence, and the usage of his magic essence to start the battle was completely alien to him. Max could not wrap his mind around what the battle of existence was. His best guess was that he could use his future or past potential to fight against his opponent. Whoever's future was stronger would be the victor. Max thought about his past and future. He was just an ordinary human in his previous life. After all, he was a reincarnated human, and at present he was only an egg. If he were to participate in the battle of existence, his only hope would be his future self. Perhaps my future self would be able to crush the black dragon pursuing my mother outside. Nevertheless, Max's interest was also piqued by the rewards offered by the third option. Divine tier race, heroic tribe, random template set. This heroic tribe, could it be the same heroic tribe from the Japanese series 1 I watched? If I could really become a member of the heroic tribe, that black dragon out there would be no match for me. One had to know that, in the anime series, the heroic tribe was a race that held enough power to destroy a galaxy. If that was the case, the upper limit of his strength would be infinitely raised. Max decided to take on a gamble. He chose the third option. Detected that the host has chosen the third option, beginning to distribute the rewards. Congratulations, host, you have randomly drawn the heroic tribe's Bellcross essence. Now loading the character template into the host's personal template. Looking at the system notification in front of him, Max's heart soared. He had made the right bet, the system's heroic tribe was the same heroic tribe that he had envisioned. Max was very happy about this, but following a loud explosion, and an earth-shattering shockwave, he immediately felt a sense of foreboding. An ominous feeling slowly rose in his heart. Max realized that he had to do something as soon as possible. Death was approaching him. My real name is Max Agatha Hill Alexander. As he read out his name in an extremely obscure and unknown language, waves of excitement rose from within Max's heart. As if under the blessing of some magical power, he read out the following words. I, Max Agatha Hill Alexander, swear by my true name to start the battle of existence. I am willing to stake my own existence and fight to the death with the black dragon that is chasing after my mother. I swear this upon the mother of the chromatic dragons, Tiamat. Along with Max's extremely obscure oath, the entire world changed in an instant. I, Max Agatha Hill Alexander, swear by my true name to start the battle of existence. I am willing to stake my own existence and fight to the death with the black dragon that is chasing after my mother. I swear this upon the mother of the chromatic dragons, Tiamat. The cryptic words of the oath reverberated in the world, causing the world in front of him to tremble. The black dragon, Adams, had a puzzled expression on his face as he stared at the ancient red dragon Agatha, who had been sent flying by his dark breath. Although Agatha was heavily injured, she was still conscious enough to process those words. A battle of existence. Who on earth had made this oath? Adams was an extremely old black dragon, who had lived for 8,000 years. He had spent his entire life searching for a way to reach the ancient dragon level. He had a wild ambition, and that was to become a true god. As a member of the dragon race, the godhood he wished to attain was that of a dragon god. However, as a member of the dragon race, it was also abundantly clear that his talent was lacking. Even after living for 8,000 years, he was still unable to break through to the ancient dragon rank. However, no matter how hard he tried, he still failed to ascend into an ancient dragon. As his life gradually inched towards its end, his obsession to become a dragon god rampantly grew. He did not want to die, as dying would mean that his ambitions would come to an end. For this reason, he did not hesitate to take the wrong path. He did not hesitate to abandon the glory of the chromatic dragons, and had instead sworn his allegiance to the god of darkness and death. He had even hunted down the weaker dragons in his race, and sold their corpses to the humans, also he could obtain money and riches. He offered these riches, as well as the souls of the dragons, to the god of darkness and death to obtain the knowledge and secrets that only the gods would know. All he wanted to know was a way to delay the arrival of his own death, as well as the method to break through the ancient dragon rank. From what he had learned, the battle of existence was one such way of breaking through. The battle of existence was as its name had implied. It was a battle where one's own existence was at stake. It was a technique that had existed since ancient times. Back in the ancient times, it was a secret technique that the major powers would only use when they were facing off against powerful foes that they had little chance against. Once it was activated, both sides would be able to choose their strongest form from the past, present, and future to battle against one another. The victor would be able to obtain everything from the loser: life, talent, and even their future. This was also a backup plan that Adams had prepared for himself. If he was truly unable to ascend to the ancient dragon level, he would challenge a weaker descendant of the dragon race to a battle of existence. However, if he were to carry out that act, he would lose the protection provided by the dragon mother, Tiamat. He would be hunted down by her and cast aside by the gods. After all, none of the gods would want a destroyer of existences like him to exist. Moreover, the gods have also strictly forbidden anyone from using the method to become a god. Therefore, the gods had worked together to prevent such an event from occurring. They had set up conditions where its use was allowed. It could only be used when one's life was in danger due to external interference. Once it was used, the gods of the participants would sense its existence and arrive on scene to witness it. If it was discovered that the user had abused it, the gods would annihilate the user. They would put the user of the technique on their kill list. It was that big of an issue. After all, the battle of existence had existed since the primordial era. For someone to use this secret technique, they had to be either an ancient monster that had existed since ancient times, or they had to have learned it from their ancestors. Other than that, they could only have learned it from the gods. Adams had learned about it from the god of darkness and death. As such, he was surprised to learn that someone in his vicinity was aware of the technique as well. He swore to fight the black dragon that was hunting its mother. The black dragon that was hunting its mother. Why does it feel like it's talking about me? After all, Adams was a black dragon. Moreover, he was also hunting a female dragon that had just laid an egg. With a doubtful attitude, Adams used his spiritual perception to sense his surroundings. However, no matter how he tried, he did not sense any other dragons around him. Not only that, because of his and Agatha's arrival, the intense pressure they exerted had already scared off all the wild beasts around them. In other words, the only creatures present was the black dragon Adams and the ancient red dragon Agatha. Other than that, no other entity was present. Especially not within earshot range. Adams was even more confused. Where's the dragon that declared the battle of existence against me then? It couldn't be the egg in Agatha's arms, right? The moment the thought surfaced in his mind, Adams immediately burst out laughing. What a joke! This is a dragon egg that hasn't even hatched. It can't even be considered a hatchling. Besides, even if it really hatched, it would only be a hatchling. Even if it was lucky enough to be born as an ancient dragon, what tricks could it possibly pull? Even if it was the strongest ancient dragon to have ever existed, it probably won't even know how to attack. Adams immediately ignored the possibility that the dragon egg before him was the challenger. At the same time, he was somewhat envious of the existence that participated in the battle of existence. After all, if one were to win in the battle of existence, it would mean that one's lifespan would be extended, and their lifespan would far surpass that of normal dragons. At the same time, they would also be able to obtain the other party's potential, origin, and even innate abilities. These were all extremely valuable perks. One had to know that these were all items that Adams desired greatly. Not long after the oath was sworn, countless chains have appeared around the scene, locking down the surrounding space. The world lost its original color and turned to black and white. Is this a sign that the origin space is forming? Adams' guess was correct. As the world's color gradually disappeared, a black and white space gradually formed. Two powerful forces suddenly appeared in the space. Adams knew it was the descent of the gods of his race. One was the god of the chromatic dragons, Mother Tiamat, whom Adams was extremely familiar with. The aura of the other god was becoming more and more familiar to Adams, but he had a bad feeling about the situation. He had to leave this dimension as soon as possible, otherwise, he might become trapped there. After all, he was certain that he had no part in the battle of existence unfolding before him. Should he become trapped in there, there would only be one outcome. He would be assimilated by the origin dimension and eventually return to the origin. That would be akin to death. This was not what Adams wanted. He looked at Agatha, who was still heavily injured and lying on the ground, with a regretful expression. What a pity. If it wasn't for this, I would have seized your corpse and the egg. With that, he prepared to fly out of the origin space. Just as he was about to fly out of the space, however, the chains of order that sealed the world sent Adams flying back, crashing heavily into the origin space. This sudden turn of events left Adams confused. What the hell? Why was I bounced back by the chains of order? He was certain that he was not a participant of the battle of existence. Why? Adam's heart was filled with doubt. If I'm indeed a participant of this battle of existence, then who's the dragon that challenged me? After all, the only ancient red dragon he had hunted was Agatha. And as far as he knew, Agatha was only over 3,000 years old. Other than the newly born dragon egg, she did not have any other offspring. For a moment Adams seemed to have thought of something, and his face was filled with shock. Could the newly born dragon egg have triggered the battle of existence? As the black dragon Adams cried out in surprise, the dragon egg that Agatha had held tightly in her arms flew out. For a moment the entire origin space fell into silence. An egg. The one challenging me is an egg. Adams came back to his senses and gradually accepted the reality before him. He was now certain that the only entity who could start the battle of existence was the dragon egg. Moreover, the target of the battle of existence was Adams himself. Adams had thought that some great existence had come across his scuffle and punished him for attempting to snatch the dragon egg. Never had he expected that the entity responsible for the challenge was the dragon egg. Adams' worries vanished, and he even felt like laughing out loud. So, little baby, how are you planning to go against me? Are you going to use that fragile eggshell of yours? You want to use it to hit me? Ha ha. Or are you planning to break out of the eggshell first and use your wings that are as thin as moths to chase after me? Adams could not believe his luck at the moment. 8,000 long years had passed, and because of his mediocre talent, he had never been able to break through into the realm of ancient dragons. He had already located a junior to carry out a battle of existence on to prolong his life and improve his talent. It was a backup plan that he had prepared for himself. He had even readied himself to be punished by Mother Tiamat, and to be hunted down by the other dragons. However, those worries had long vanished. After all, there was a mere dragon egg that had challenged him. It was essentially stealing candy from a baby. Dragon God, did you see that? I'm not the one who initiated the battle of existence. I'm the one being challenged. I'm not guilty. In this battle of existence, Adams was the one being challenged. This meant that even if he destroyed the dragon egg and plundered everything from it, he would still be let off scot-free. Logically speaking, no one could say that he was in the wrong, and the dragon god could not punish his actions. Adams became more and more excited. He flapped his wings and stirred up a fierce wind. The gusts of wind that hit the barrier of the origin space rebounded, and they reverberated in this space until it filled every corner. In Adam's eyes, the dragon egg was no match for it. He did not even have to attack it. Just a gust of wind was enough to destroy the dragon egg. However, the omnipresent gale did not topple the dragon egg. The dragon egg hung in the center of the origin space, and did not budge at all. Despite the gale force winds surrounding it, the egg was as stable as a statue. A trace of unease gradually formed in Adam's heart, but he shook his head. No matter how mediocre he was, it was not to the extent of not being able to defeat a dragon egg. It looks like my wing attack is ineffective against it. Adams stretched out his front claws. The black dragons not only had a strong acid breath, but they also possessed the greatest physical strength out of all their brethren. An 8,000-year-old black dragon had claws that were sharper than any sword in the world, and its scales were stronger than all the city walls in the world. Hand-to-hand combat was Adam's specialty. Adams did not intend to continue playing this game with the dragon egg. He wanted to end this battle. Thank you for your dedication. Now go die obediently. Adams flapped his wings and rapidly advanced. He waved his claws at the dragon egg. He knew how strong he was. With this claw, even an ancient dragon would lose a piece of flesh. What's more, his target was a mere dragon egg. If his claw attack were to land, he was confident that he would obliterate the egg. However, the expected impact did not come. Adams realized that he had missed. It was not that Adams was dizzy from old age. It was that dragon egg that had disappeared. I also want to thank you for your contribution, Adams Spalin Brimuamp Tracy. Adams heard a voice coming from above his head. It was calling his true name. Adams raised his head. A huge red dragon spread its wings that covered the sky. Who are you? The moment he saw the red dragon, Adams felt an irresistible pressure. It was an intense pressure that threatened to squash him. Adams did not understand the scene before him. He was supposed to face off against a dragon egg, and yet, there was a gargantuan monster before him. Adams had no idea what had happened. The only two things that Adams was aware of was that there was a dragon above him, and it was red in color. As for how strong it was, Adams had no idea. He did not know before because he had never seen such a creature before. Moreover, he had also failed to notice his body crumbling into dust. He would never learn of the red dragon's strength, as his future had already been robbed by Max. Phew! Max, who was in the dragon egg, let out a long breath. Battle victory, Black Dragon, Adams template, loading. Loading completed. Acidic dragon breath obtained, as well as melee combat ability. Looking at the interface in front of him, Max knew that the battle outside was over, and he was victorious. In truth, Max had no idea what was happening outside. After all, it was a battle of existence, so Max had naturally chosen his strongest future form. As for how the battle outside was fought, Max was clueless. However, from the fact that it had only taken him an instant to defeat an 8,000-year-old dragon, Max was certain that he would become fairly strong in the future. Upon this thought, Max smiled in relief. System, look at my attributes. Generating attributes. Host, Max. Race, Red Dragon, Lawful Evil. Current dragon rank, Dragon Egg. Age, 0. Attack, 0, Normal Dragon Egg 0. Defense, 1, Normal Dragon Egg 1. Speed, 0, Normal Dragon Egg 0. Strength, 3, Normal Dragon Egg 3. Magic, none. Abilities, Bite, locked, Claw Strike, locked, Stomp, locked, Tail Swipe, locked. Breath, Lightning, locked, Strong Acid, locked. Remarks, you are currently no different from the pebbles on the roadside. However, your future potential remains a mystery. Hiss. Max took a deep breath. The system is not lying to me. Previously, Max already knew that he was a dragon, and he was also a red dragon, the subtype that was the most proficient in magic among the dragons. However, since he had not hatched from his egg yet, there was nothing written in the magic column. As a red dragon, he should not have had so many melee skills. After all, he abilities like Bite, Tail Swipe, and Claw Strike. It seems that I've obtained Adam's abilities. However, the screen was filled with various locked skills. It seems that I need to hatch to use these skills. I need to hatch as soon as possible. My child. Agatha woke up from her coma. She did not know why she was in a coma. However, the first thing that came to her mind upon regaining consciousness was her precious egg. Damn Adams, why don't you die in a ditch somewhere? Agatha complained. However, upon opening her eyes, she was immediately greeted by the sight of Adam's head before her. Just like what she had mentioned just a moment ago, Adams was really dead. Agatha was stunned. Although the scene was obviously to her favor, Agatha was clueless as to what had transpired while she was unconscious. How can an 8,000-year-old black dragon be killed so easily? The battle that had seemingly ensued was too quiet to even wake her up. As such, she was thoroughly confused. I bet that it's done by an envoy of the dragon god, or a righteous dragon that would not stand for injustice. But does such a dragon even exist? Agatha's thoughts were quickly interrupted, however. After all, her gaze had landed on her egg that was lying unharmed within a patch of grass. Agatha checked it carefully, and after confirming that it was not broken, she let out a sigh of relief. Compared to other chromatic dragons, red dragons were much gentler to their children. The other chromatic dragons had essentially treated their children as slaves. It was even common for them to kill their children. Agatha picked up the dragon egg. Before she left, however, she also picked up Adam's corpse before returning to her underground cave. Max felt weightless and knew that he had been brought up. It seemed like he was heading towards somewhere. Soon after, everything around him had suddenly calmed down. Through this, Max knew that he had arrived at his nest. All right, time to try and break out of this egg. Max thought so and tried to move. This action caused the eggshell that he was in to shake slightly. This made Agatha, who was standing guard at the side, to feel a trace of joy. After all, the nest of 6 dragon eggs had been attacked by a black dragon today, and their numbers had almost been reduced to 5. Nevertheless, in that moment, the only egg that was moving was the egg that had been snatched earlier. This was a rather surprising find, and it had made Agatha look forward towards its growth. A rare sliver of kindness arose within Agatha's heart, and she extended her front claws to lightly tap the energetic egg twice. Max, who was in the eggshell, heard the sound coming from above his head. He also knew that it was a sign from his mother to hatch quickly. However, Max was a little hesitant. He checked his body and knew that he was a red dragon. He also carefully checked his gender. After confirming that he was a male dragon, he heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his transmigration was still fairly normal. However, Max worried that his mother would notice that he was not her real son. He shuddered at the ensuing consequences. Forget it, it's not like staying in here would be any better. With this thought in mind, Max attempted to break out of the shell once more. He had plenty of skills waiting to be unlocked. He could not stay in the eggshell forever. This did not make the hatching process any easier, however. After all, dragons were a powerful race. If reproduction was such an easy feat, why have they not ruled over the world yet? Forget how rare dragon eggs were, even if laying eggs was an easy task, the number of baby dragons that would successfully hatch was still half of the total eggs laid. The concept of caesarean sections did not exist among the dragons. If the eggs had failed to hatch, then that was that. There was nothing else they could do. They would chalk it up to the baby dragon being too weak to be born into the world. Therefore, the mother dragon would not help her child break out of the egg. It was rare for dragons encourage their child, and Agatha's encouragement earlier was definitely not the norm. With this in mind, Max exerted more force and broke open a big hole in the egg. After all, he had absorbed the talents of the black dragon, Adam's, and the black dragons were the strongest dragons physically. In the end, Max had broken out of his shell without much issues. Crack! A crisp sound rang out, and Max stuck out his cute big head from the hole, and opened his mucus-layered eyelids. At the same time, he saw his mother. The scales on Agatha's body were a faint crimson color. Her wings were tucked behind her back, and her bones and meridians could be clearly seen. From time to time, Agatha's skin would glisten with a flash of static electricity, and emit a crackling sound. Meanwhile, her pair of vertical pupils that looked like lava balls were staring at Max with much interest. Of course, Max knew what his mother was trying to determine. After all, not every dragon egg that hatched would yield a true dragon, and at times, other subspecies would hatch. The most practical way to differentiate them was to see whether the hatchling could speak its true name once it was born. If it was capable of doing so, it meant that it had inherited the memories of its ancestors, which would also mean that it was a true dragon. At the same time, it also meant that it was acknowledged by the evil dragon god Tiamat. Only true dragons would obtain some ancient memories, and their strength would grow with time. Of course, Max knew his true name. He had learned of it the moment he transmigrated. Max Agatha Hill Alexander. Max spoke his true name. Max had already gotten used to the language of the dragons, as such, he had spoken his name rather naturally. After saying his real name, Max saw that his mother Agatha had become very visibly happy. The crackling sound of static electricity had become much more obvious. Suddenly, Max felt a pang of hunger in his stomach. Sure enough, even great beings like dragons had to eat. There was nothing to eat at the moment, but upon turning around and spotting his former eggshell. The clear and sticky liquid that was hanging on the eggshell looked no different from honey to him. The eggshell was also a food full of calcium. It was undoubtedly the best thing for the growth of a hatchling dragon. Therefore, Max did not stand on ceremony and immediately devoured his eggshell. While he ate, he summoned the system. Host, Max. Race, Red Dragon, Lawful Evil. Current Dragon Rank, Hatchling. Age, 1. Maximum Lifespan, 12,000, Ancient Dragon. Attack, 10, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 7. Defense, 8, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 5. Speed, 10, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 9. Strength, 10, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 5. Magic, none. Abilities, Bite, Claw Strike, Stomp, Tail Swipe. Breath, Lightning 1, Strong Acid. Remarks, Awesome. Among your brothers and sisters, you are the one with the hardest fists. Use brute force to hunt your food. Ugh. Max looked at the interface in front of him and fell into deep thought. It was precisely because he had snatched the abilities of a black dragon that had resulted in his natural attributes to be stronger than usual. This was especially true in terms of melee combat ability. In that aspect, he was practically comparable to a black dragon hatchling. Remarks, Awesome. Among your brothers and sisters, you are the one with the hardest fists. Use brute force to hunt your food. Brothers and sisters. Max suddenly recalled after reading the system interface. His so-called brothers and sisters seemed to be the dragon eggs lying next to them. There were 5 dragon eggs in total. Since Max had spent most of his life as a human, he had yet to adapt to his new life as a dragon. Moreover, egg shells were an exquisite delicacy for dragons, so much so that Max had initially thought that the dragon eggs before him were his meal. That was close. I almost ate all my brothers and sisters. Max thought to himself. At this moment, one of the dragon eggs began to shake. Oh? Will it be a brother or a sister? Max was looking forward to it. He did not mind having a docile brother or sister by his side. After all, he had siblings in his previous life as well. However, after shaking for a few times, the dragon egg suddenly went stationary. It seemed like his sibling was trapped inside. Not all young dragons could break out of their shells. The eggshell of a dragon must be firm so that it would not be destroyed by some accident. This would ensure the survival rate of the young dragons. However, this also limited the emergence of many young dragons. At least half of the young dragons had suffocated within their eggs before they had even gotten the chance to see this world. This was especially true for the red dragon race. After all, they were a race that was famous for their ability to control magic. As their talent was in magic, it came as no surprise that their physique was a little weak, and as a consequence, their hatching rate was not that high. Of course, Max was an exception. After absorbing the talent of an 8,000-year-old black dragon, Max's physique was completely incomparable to other red dragons. Realizing that his sibling was about to suffocate to death, Max took advantage of his mother's lapse in attention to knock the top of the eggshell. Had his mother spotted this scene, Max would be in hot waters. After all, assisting young dragons in breaking out of their eggs was a taboo among dragons. Dragons worshipped strength, and if one were to fail to break out of their shells, it meant that they were not supposed to be born. However, Max's emotions had overridden these thoughts. Back in his previous life, he had siblings. As such, he did not mind helping his siblings to break out of their shells. After cracking open the egg, Max was greeted by the sight of a little female dragon poking her head out. After making her way out, Max's sister spoke her true name. Mia Agatha Affendor. It was at this moment that Agatha returned her attention to the eggs. As such, she had not noticed Max's prior actions. All she saw was two pure dragons lying in wait in a nest of dragon eggs. This made Agatha feel a little relieved. The static crackling sound had become more consistent. There had been many subspecies of chromatic dragons over the years. Almost every once in a while, there would be one chromatic dragon that would go after Mother Tiamat. The chromatic dragons would attack Tiamat from behind, and the metal dragons would go against Bahamut. Therefore, Agatha was already very satisfied with the son of a real dragon, let alone now that there was another daughter of a real dragon. This nest of two true dragons in a row could only be said to be really lucky. Mia shook her head as if she was looking for something. After a while, she found the eggshell under her feet, and began to feed it in large mouthfuls. While observing his sister, Max realized that his physique was completely different from that of a normal red dragon hatchling. After comparing themselves, Max realized that his body was almost twice as large as his sister's. Aside from that, his muscles were also more well-defined. It seems that the physique of black dragons is not to be taken lightly. Max nodded. No wonder I could break out of my shell that easily. System, take a look at Mia's attributes. Loading. True name, Mia Agatha Affendor. Race, red dragon, lawful evil. Current dragon rank, hatchling. Age, 1. Maximum lifespan, 10,000, ancient dragon. Attack, 4, normal red dragon hatchling 7. Defense, 3, normal red dragon hatchling 5. Speed, 5, normal red dragon hatchling 9. Strength, 3, normal red dragon hatchling 5. Magic, none. Ability, bite. Breath, lightning. Remarks, this hatchling has an extremely high aptitude for magic, but its body is weak. Without someone to rely upon, it cannot survive past its youth. Extremely high aptitude for magic. Max looked at his sister, who was eating miserably. According to the system, his sister would become a very powerful red dragon in the future, and she would be adept in the mystic arts. However, as a result of her talent for magic, her physique was extremely weak. Had Max not assisted her hatching process earlier, she would have suffocated to death within her egg. Moreover, through the system, Max had also noticed his sister's maximum lifespan. 10,000 years. That was the same as an ancient dragon's. If memory serves, half of the dragons that Mother has given birth to would advance into ancient dragons. These dragons would have a lifespan of 10,000 years. Mother is indeed a capable dragon, huh? Agatha's attention was drawn over. Another child had called out their true name, after all. This meant that there were two pure dragons in her nest. At this moment, her daughter was eating eggshells by herself. Upon noticing this scene, Agatha suddenly had doubts. Agatha had not noticed it earlier, as there was no comparison to be made. However, after comparing her two children, the difference between them was obvious. Despite being a red dragon, her son was so healthy that he looked more like a black dragon. On the other hand, her daughter did not seem strong enough to break out of her egg by herself. Her daughter even choked and coughed when she ate the eggshells. They're still pure dragons. Agatha comforted herself. Although one of her two children was too strong, and the other was too skinny, they were both pure dragons. Her luck was enough to make the other dragon mothers gnash their teeth in anger. Agatha's attention shifted again, and Max followed her and focused on the unborn dragon eggs. Unfortunately, her nest was similar to a loot box. After the birth of two pure dragons, the rest of her offspring were rather weird. Her next offspring was a creature that was incapable of stating its true name after birth. It looked like a pure dragon, and even after closer inspection, it looked no different from pure dragons. Alas, the fact that it did not state its true name after birth, and instead mentioned words like hungry, had told Agatha all she needed to know. This was a common occurrence, as giving birth to drakes was the norm. Agatha reached out her claws and grabbed the drake. Then, without hesitation, she threw it out of the cave. Max felt no discomfort from his lesser brother being thrown out. Although they had similar appearances and were both dragons, the difference between a pure dragon and a drake was like heaven and earth. They could not be considered the same species at all. Most drakes that hatched from a dragon's nest were killed on the spot, or they would become food for the pure dragons. The red dragons were the more compassionate dragons among the chromatic dragons. Usually, they would chase out the subdragons and leave them to fend for themselves. Upon this thought, Max sighed with relief. Fortunately, he was born as a pure dragon. The remaining dragon eggs hatched one after another, but they were all drakes. Unsurprisingly, all of them were thrown out by his mother. The final dragon egg remained stationary for quite some time. This meant that it had failed to break out of its eggshell. After all, the time required for drakes and dragons to break out of their eggshells was about the same. As such, if one had yet to emerge from their egg at this point, it meant that it had already suffocated to death within the egg. Agatha watched this scene silently from the side. Dragons were not a friendly race. This was especially true for the chromatic dragons that had an evil alignment, even towards their own children. After all, dragons valued power and treasure, and they had no need for the weak. Failing to break out of their eggshells would result in them becoming food for their brothers and sisters. Eat. After saying this, Agatha went to play with her hoard of gems. Mother seems to adore her treasures more than her children. The tone she used earlier was more akin to an order. There was no motherly love to be found from her words. There was nothing Max could do to alleviate his siblings' condition. He could not crack open the egg in front of his mother, right? If he did that, his mother would definitely doubt the purity of Max's bloodline, or wonder if there was something wrong with his brain. After all, a normal dragon would not have such a strong sense of kinship. More food, more food. Max broke open the egg and began eating. The egg white was very thirst-quenching, and accompanying the sweet egg yolk was also a rare piece of meat. Max thought to himself, the life of a dragon is truly wonderful. As Max ate, he spotted his drooling sister out of the corner of his eye. His sister curled up and swayed back and forth behind him. She reminded him of a puppy waiting to receive its meal. In just half a minute, Max had already eaten more than half of the dragon egg's content. He had deliberately saved some for his sister. He knew that his newborn sister must be craving for this scrumptious meal. Sure enough, once Max stepped back, his sister rushed over and ate the rest of its contents. Compared to normal hatchlings, his sister was extremely thin and weak. The periosteum of her wings was as thin as paper, and her forelimbs were protruding. She was also rather petite. Had Max not helped her, his sister would definitely have failed to break out of the dragon egg. Should that happen, she would end up as food. However, there was a reason for his sister's frail constitution. Max was really looking forward to his sister's high aptitude for magic that was mentioned by the system. Brother. Halfway through her meal, she suddenly turned around and asked, "Were you the one who helped me earlier?" Max nodded. "My sister actually remembered my act of kindness." Not bad. Max was judging her by human standard of morality. However, by dragon standards of morality, that might not be the case. His sister paused for a moment. She seemed to be thinking of the word for gratitude in the dragon language. However, how could such a word exist within the language of evil dragons? After thinking for a long time, his sister finally replied, "You are very kind, brother." Following this, his sister continued to consume the egg's contents. Max did not know how he should react to the statement. He was unsure whether he was being praised or insulted. After all, he was now an evil dragon, the kind that would snatch away princesses of foreign lands on a whim. The life of hatchlings was so simple that 2 words were enough to describe it. Eat. Sleep. His mother had hunted their food for them. Needless to say, she had no difficulty obtaining food. As a creature at the top of the food chain, everything that could move outside was her food. As time went on, Max noticed that red dragons were particularly fond of eating camels. Max did not believe it at first, but he realized that he had no resistance to roasted camel meat. His mother would bring home raw camel meat, but right before feeding it to the siblings, she would roast the meat with her lightning breath. The camel meat would become crispy and tender, and upon taking a bite, its oil would splash everywhere. It was almost comparable to fried chicken drumsticks. Whenever the siblings ate this meal, Agatha would proudly raise her head, and her whole body would make a crackling sound of static electricity. She would lock eyes with the siblings, as if to ask, "Have you learned how to make it?" "I can't learn it, I can't learn it." Max realized that his aptitude for magic and breathing were very poor. Had he been any other dragon species, he would not be bothered, but he was a red dragon, a race that prided themselves on their aptitude for magic. A red dragon with poor magic aptitude was like an NBA superstar, who was incapable of dribbling. However, Max was not too flustered. He consoled himself, if need be, I could just start a battle of existence with someone who's adept at magic. Plundering one's magical aptitude should be easier than practicing it, right? Max had already fully realized the power of the system. Previously, he had plundered the abilities of a black dragon, and this had resulted in his strong physique. Even as a hatchling, he had already grown sharp claws and hard scales. In the future, he would undoubtedly be the strongest red dragon when it came to physical combat. There was also a legend among the dragons. It was said that pure dragons did not need to practice, and they could become stronger just by sleeping. In other words, scenarios in light novels like "I can become stronger just by sleeping" were a reality for dragons. Max did not believe it at first either. However, whenever he became full, a wave of sleepiness would besiege him. In less than 2 seconds, he would fall asleep, and his sister would use his wings to cushion her sleep. Warm. Max was not used to this at first. After all, how could there be such a brother-sister relationship? However, Max slowly learned to accept it. I've become a dragon. Sure, my sense of ethics are different now, but so what? Agatha was very satisfied with her 2 sleepy children. After all, dragons use sleep to improve their strength. The fact that they were constantly sleeping proved that they had plenty of potential. As such, Agatha made sure to bring back plenty of food every day, and she would even go an extra mile to hunt down Max's favorite camel meat. One day, however, Agatha no longer roasted the camel meat for the siblings. Agatha had returned with a raw camel this time. The camel had died rather pitifully. It was scared to death by Agatha. Max looked at the raw camel meat in front of him, and his mother's serious expression. He understood what it meant. This is a test. Max sighed. It would be easy, no, effortless for Max to kill the camel with his fang and claws. However, using his dragon breath was a whole different matter. The amount of fear pumping through his veins was similar to students being notified of a pop quiz. Use your lightning breaths, my children. Agatha was using a commanding tone. Max could only brace himself and open his mouth. As he did so, electricity danced in his mouth and made crackling sounds. Pfft. In the end, Max had only spat out a weak electric current, one that was as weak as the fuse in a lighter. Agatha turned her head away in disappointment. However, upon recalling Max's strong physique, her opinion changed somewhat. You're up. Agatha pushed the camel meat towards Mia. It was now Mia's turn to demonstrate her ability. Whoosh! The moment Mia opened her mouth, a surge of electric current struck the camel's body. The camel, which was already dead, twitched on the ground, as if it had been brought back to life. An instant later, however, it started to burn. That's enough. Mia. Stop. Agatha's order did not work. Her sister could not control her dragon breath, and electricity continued to ravage the camel. Not long after, the juicy camel meat had turned into a pile of charcoal. That's good cooking right there, Max mentally spat. He was certain that his mother would be enraged. When she stood up, she was 7 to 8 meters tall, which was practically the size of a 4-story villa. You. Agatha spread her wings. As her periosteum stretched, static electricity flowed, and the crackling sound of electricity instantly filled the cave. This is your dinner, idiots. You destroyed it. Now go find your own food. Agatha turned around abruptly, and her thick tail rolled over. Boom. By the time Max had returned to his senses, he realized that he had been swept out of the cave. Cough cough. Even so, the electricity in his sister's mouth was still shining. After coughing violently for a few times, it finally stopped. Then, his sister looked in the direction of the cave with tears in her eyes. Max rolled his eyes. You crybaby. If anyone has the right to cry, it's definitely me. I'm not the one who burned the camel meat. I didn't do anything, and yet, I was still chased out of the cave. Plus, we're supposed to be evil dragons. When we're in a bad mood, we'll raise countries to the ground. How can you cry over such a simple matter? Sister, are you a proper dragon or not? Let's go, sister. We should accept reality. Sooner or later, we have to learn how to survive on our own. While he spoke, Max stretched out his claws and patted his sister's head twice. Every time his sister made a mistake, Max would comfort her like this. She would always close her eyes and stretch out her neck. Moreover, her tail would also constantly rise and fall. I'm very weak. His sister raised her head and stated. Max thought for a moment. His sister was probably trying to say, I'm sorry. However, there was no such concept among the proud race of dragons. You're not weak. Max glanced at his sister's stats panel again. Breath, lightning breath, strength 15, normal red dragon hatchlings 5. Just as the system had stated, his sister's talent in magic was different from normal dragons. Heck, it was almost 3 times that of normal red dragon hatchlings. I should check my stats again. Max opened his interface. As a result of the naps that he had taken, his attributes had increased a little. True name, Max Agatha Hill Alexander. Race, Red Dragon, Lawful Evil. Current dragon rank, Hatchling. Age, 1. Maximum lifespan, 12,000, Ancient Dragon. Attack, 20, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 7. Defense, 10, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 5. Speed, 23, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 9. Strength, 19, Normal Red Dragon Hatchling 5. Magic, Lightning Arrow, Strength 0. Abilities, Bite, Claw Strike, Stomp, Tail Swipe. Breath, Lightning, Strength 3, Strong Acid, Strength 1. Remarks, such powerful melee combat ability, and yet such mediocre magical aptitude. Are you sure you're not a child of a black dragon? Sigh. Every time Max saw this panel, his heart would ache. It seemed like all his luck had been spent on reincarnating into a pure dragon. When it came to magic, his talent was really mediocre. The thought of fighting a strong magic user in a battle of existence had become more tempting day by day. Should this continue any further, my ability to control magic would most likely stagnate. As a red dragon, this is simply an anomaly. Red dragons did not like anomalies. That was what Max thought. However, there was a creature with extremely high magic aptitude by his side, which was his sister. However, according to the rules of the system, Max could only trigger a battle of existence when his life was threatened. Max turned around to look at his sister. They were currently flying in the sky. His sister was flying with great difficulty due to the strong turbulence. She tilted her head and squinted her eyes, and it had taken great effort for her to keep up with Max. My life would be in danger if I were to pin my hopes on such a weak sister. Max shook his head. No, never mind. Now that I've been reborn as a dragon, she's my one and only sibling. What about his mother, Agatha, you might ask? She was the type of dragon that believed in fate when raising her children. It was for this reason that she swept both her children out of the cave and let them fend for themselves. If they managed to return, it would mean that the fates have yet to give up on them. If they could not return, it would mean that their fate had come to an end. The evil dragon god Tiamat should really consider changing the parenting ideology of the chromatic dragons. Despite being the apex predators of the continent, their population had remained small. There was definitely a reason behind this. My child, you're already half a month old. It's time for you to learn how to earn money to support your family. Who on earth would raise their child like that? The outside world was so dangerous. There were animals everywhere that could threaten baby dragons. Worse still, there were also ferocious adventurers. Although Max was only half a month old as a dragon, he had played as an adventurer several times within video games. As such, he knew how greedy and dangerous adventurers could be. In the eyes of adventurers, dragon hatchlings were flying money bags. Dragon tooth sword, dragon tendon bow, dragon eye stone, dragon wing coat, dragon whip. Anything that was made out of dragons would have its value soar. Since adult dragons were difficult targets to hunt, young dragons had instead become the favorite prey of adventurers. In a way, hatching from their egg was the first major challenge for young dragons, and the second was to survive the threat of adventurers. Why didn't I realize this before? Humans are such a pain to deal with. Max grumbled as the air whizzed around him. He then glanced down. On the ground, a group of camels was traveling somewhere. Red dragons were natural assassins. Their bodies ranged from scarlet to blood crimson. They had everything from light blue to dark blue. Flying in the sky, it was not so easy to be discovered. The red dragons used a unique hunting method. They would dig holes, bury themselves within said holes, and wait for their prey to wander into their trap. As a race that was known for its aptitude for magic, the older red dragons would sometimes use illusions to confuse their prey. For example, they would display oases within deserts to attract thirsty animals. Unlike their brethren, the red dragons were also unique in the sense that they were the only type of chromatic dragons that cooked their food. This was due to the lightning breath they possessed, as it enabled them to cook their food. Max rejoiced upon this realization, and he was glad that he was not born as any other race of chromatic dragons. I'll go and dig a hole, brother, Mia said as she swooped down. As a pure dragon, they were born with memories passed down from ancient times. Among their memories of hunting prey, burrowing seemed to be the best method. By doing so, they could relax and save their stamina. However, Max did not share the same sentiment as his ancestors. How troublesome. This is an issue that can be easily solved with brute force. There was no need for such meticulous plans. Max stopped Mia. Come back, sister. What's wrong? Tell me, what are we? Dragons. Whoa. Then as proud dragons, what hunting methods should we employ to show our might to other creatures? We should dig a hole, and then. Upon speaking those words, Mia too had realized that something was wrong. Indeed, we are proud red dragons of the chromatic dragon race. Why is our hunting technique this pathetic? Mia stuttered, but this is the knowledge that our ancestors have left for us. Max shook his head. Forget about those memories. We have more effective hunting methods. It's our dragon breath, my dear sister. We'll use our lightning breath to hunt our prey. Mia nodded and began flapping her wings. Upon taking to the air, she then fired off a bolt of lightning. Boom! A strong white light flashed and enveloped Mia's petite body. The ear-piercing sound of thunder rang in Max's ears. Had Max been in his human form, his eardrums would definitely have ruptured from the explosion. However, now that he was a dragon, the explosion was akin to a war cry. His heart throbbed inexplicably, and he suddenly had an urge to fight. Perhaps you've gone a little overboard. Once the lightning breath ended, Max looked down. Unsurprisingly, Mia had left a huge crater within the desert, one that was as huge as a basketball court. As for her accuracy, however, she had somehow missed the group of camels entirely. Not a single camel was injured, except for one that was scared to death. Moreover, Mia's shot had also alerted the camels of her presence, and they frantically scattered into all directions. "Watch carefully, sister." While diving down, Max shouted, "This is how we should use our power." Boom! Max slammed into the ground and crushed a camel with pinpoint accuracy. However, he did not stop there. After killing the first camel, he then rushed to the side and drove an uppercut into another camel. The camel hurtled in the air, and right before landing, Max flung his fist into it. Max controlled his strength very well. He had avoided killing the camel. Instead, he attacked it until it could no longer move. He wanted to preserve it, so that he could enjoy fresh camel meat upon returning home. 2 minutes later, there were already 8 half-dead camels lying on the ground. However, there were still a few camels that had managed to escape. Max had no desire to chase after them. The desert was a dangerous place, after all. Despite its peaceful appearance, there were many dangers lying underneath it. Many of those dangers could easily kill dragon hatchlings. After all, ever since Agatha had made the desert her hunting ground, the creatures there had suffered greatly. They were bullied by her all day long, and as a result, they had developed a deep-seated hatred towards dragons. Should the siblings encounter them, they would most likely end up as mincemeat. Max let out a long sigh. He had hunted down 8 camels in total. This was enough for him and his sister to eat for a number of days. Moreover, his mother might even praise them for how capable they were and might even think twice before chasing them out again. Big brother is so strong. Mia descended from the sky. As she had a smaller stature than Max, she needed to look up to meet his gaze. Clap, clap. Mia clapped her 2 front paws, her eyes full of worship. Just don't tell mother about this. Also, don't imitate my clapping. Max wondered whether his hunting habit was considered unusual for other red dragons. Moreover, he also feared that some of his human habits would leak out by accident. His clapping was one such example of his former habits. Let's kill one them and make it our meal, Max suggested. Hunting was a very physically exhausting activity, especially since Max had taken the physical route of doing so. Furthermore, he was famished, and he had not taken a meal ever since Mia ruined their dinner. To prevent Mia from losing control again, Max suggested that they eat raw camel meat. To his surprise, raw camel meat was also a delicacy. It was juicy, and its texture was exquisite. Moreover, its juices had also served to cool down the siblings from the hot desert weather. I wonder what human meat tastes like. The thought suddenly occurred to Max while he was eating. Now that he was a dragon, his thoughts had also begun to conform to the ideology of dragons. Had he fantasized about cannibalism in his previous life, Max would have vomited on the spot. Be it physically or mentally, he could not accept it. However, now that he was a dragon, he had instead become excited upon that thought. He felt as if it was a way of exacting revenge. After all, dragon hatchlings were often hunted down by humans. As a pure dragon, Max had inherited the memories of his ancestors, and as such, he had a rather negative perception of humans. It was shame. It was the shame of having one's child killed by a human. Arg! Halfway through their meal, Mia suddenly screamed. Blood flowed out of her mouth as she spat out her tooth. Seeing this, Max asked, "What's wrong?" "My tooth broke." Max frowned. Although dragons did not have eyebrows, he still subconsciously did the action. Although Mia was a dragon hatchling, her teeth should be as strong as a normal beast's. What on earth is harder than a dragon's teeth? Max looked around and noticed something else that her sister had spat out. A badge. It was a badge made of pure gold. There was a layer of magic over it, which made the badge extremely strong. There were 3 weapons engraved on the badge. A long sword, a heavy crossbow, and a magic staff. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that the badge itself resembled a shield. At the top was a small cross, which served as structure to tie a string upon. Warrior, swordsman, archer, mage, priest. Max felt that this combination looked a little familiar. Damn it! Aren't these adventurer classes? It was only then that Max realized that he was holding an adventurer's badge. The fact that it had come from the camels meant that the camels were owned by a group of adventurers. The adventurers had most likely set loose their camels to graze on the plants nearby. However, one of the careless adventurers had left his badge on the camels. There must be adventurers around. Mia's lightning breath earlier might have alerted them. No wonder our ancestors fancied carrying out sneak attacks. Red dragons like to launch sneak attacks. It turns out that the silent approach is the best approach. It's time to pack up. Upon realizing this, Max hurriedly put down the camel leg in his hand. Max gave up on his prey. After selecting a couple of the most delicious parts, he immediately dragged his sister into the air. This desert was in the north of the continent. There was a group of desert residents here. They raised camels, sold porcelain, or acted as guides for travelers who wanted to take a shortcut through the desert. Their days were not bad. That is, until one night, when a red shadow flashed across the sky. Agatha, a 3,000-year-old ancient red dragon, appeared and hunted everything in its vicinity. The existence of the dragon had dealt a great blow to the village. Ever since then, no one had dared to release their camels. Men, women, old and young were afraid to go out. The goods that were stored in their warehouses were gathering dust, and no outsider had dared to come anywhere close to the desert. One day, Agatha arrived at a village. She spread her wings that covered the sky, and unleashed lightning from her wings. Agatha was not trying to hurt anyone. However, she had taken all the camels. Nevertheless, the strong gusts from the flapping of her wings had killed most of the children and elderly in the village. The old village chief was swept away by the wind and had died after crashing into a tree. As a result, a new village chief was elected. Upon taking up the position, he immediately suggested to escape. The villagers accepted his suggestion, and they had given up the place where they were born and raised, also they could seek a safer place to live at. However, upon reaching the edge of the desert, they were besieged by tempestuous winds and rampant thunder. Agatha was waiting for them there. The dragon crawled out of the sand and killed the village chief. Then, it stared at the villagers with its strange vertical eyes, which made everyone's hair stand on end. Through her gaze, everyone understood that they had become prisoners of the dragon. The red dragon preferred camel meat to human meat, and in order to feast on camel meat, she would need a village to raise said camels. As a result, they had discovered a way to live in harmony with the dragons, which was to buy a batch of camels on a regular basis, and then send them to the desert as tribute to the dragon. This dealt a huge blow to the finances of the village. It was already difficult for them to feed themselves, and now they had to feed a hungry dragon. Worse still, there were rumors of Agatha flying across the sky with 2 dragon hatchlings. This was devastating news. The appetite of 2 dragon hatchlings was comparable to that of adult dragons. Should the situation continue any further, they would either die of starvation, or they would be killed by Agatha. One day, however, a group of people wearing colorful clothes came from afar. Adventurers. The 3rd village chief was the first to notice the adventurers. He gathered all the food and water sources he could muster, called the most beautiful women within the village, and warmly welcomed the adventurers. The adventurers were well equipped, and their combat prowess was outstanding. The warrior leading the party was wearing a full-body plate armor that cost a lot of money. It was said that the giant gemstone sword in his hand could easily cut off the claws of the giant dragon. Meanwhile, the woman carrying the bow was not only skilled in archery, but she also carried a dismantled ballista in her luggage. Those crossbows were so powerful that they could nail a dragon to the ground. However, the most powerful member in the party was an elderly person. Tahir, the former palace mage of the kingdom, the incarnation of the god of thunder. The village chief had quickly taken notice of the elderly man. He was a top mage of the kingdom, and the idol of all those who practiced magic. It was said that Tahir's lightning magic could even rival ancient red dragons. Tahir stroked his white beard and chuckled. He responded to those claims by saying that he was at most, at the level of an archaic dragon. However, a faint blue spark of static electricity traveled along his beard. This indicated that his magic had reached the peak. After all, he was capable of using electricity without even casting a spell. This was a trait that only red dragons exhibited. After eating and drinking, Tahir mentioned that they wanted to go further north in the desert, but they did not want to take a detour. As such, they decided to cross the desert. Tahir asked, "Is there anything dangerous in this desert?" The villagers remained silent. They were purposely concealing the existence of the 3 red dragons. That night, the village chief had found it difficult to sleep. Later that night, the village chief ordered the fittest villagers to purchase 20 camels with the last few silver coins in the village's treasury. Early morning the next day, the adventurers had finished packing up, and they were preparing to leave. It was at this point that the village chief brought in the camels. "This is our last gift, please accept it, heroes." Tahir did not notice the scheme, and accepted the camels with a smile. Since that day, the villagers would look in the direction in which the adventurers had departed to. Red dragons loved eating camels. The adventurers rode on the camels the villagers had given them. There were a total of 20 of them. They were certain that the red dragons would cross path with the adventurers. Although the villagers called the adventurers heroes, they knew that the adventurers were not good people. They would not help them out just because they asked. Adventurers were a money-minded folks, after all. However, the village could not afford the commission fee needed to slay the dragons. Moreover, they could not tell the adventurers the truth. They had purposely withheld the existence of the 3 red dragons. This was because even someone as powerful as Tahir might not be willing to fight against an ancient dragon like Agatha. The group of adventurers was the village's last hope. Therefore, they did not mind playing dirty. "Wake up, Rafiq." Rafiq's first action upon waking up was to check whether his ruby greatsword was still beside him. "What's wrong?" "Tahir, why did you wake me up?" The person who woke him up was Tahir. At this moment, the old mage was so angry that his beard was curled up and static electricity was coursing through it. While digging his magic staff into the ground, he shouted, "The camels, you dimwit! Where are the camels that I told you to keep an eye on?" "Ah!" Upon observing his surroundings, Rafiq noticed there was an alarming lack of camels around him. Instead, for as far as his eyes could see, there was only a vast and empty desert. The camels were gone. Rafiq jolted up violently and had instantly sobered up. In order to cross the desert, the kind-hearted natives had provided them with 20 camels as their ride. However, as they needed to sleep during the night, Rafiq, who had lost a raffle, had been assigned to keep watch of the campsite as well as the camels. Unfortunately, Rafiq had fallen asleep while standing, and he had forgotten to tie the camels. The fault was entirely his. "Idiot! You nincompoop!" At this moment, the party's archer that had been stirred awake by the ruckus had also arrived on scene. It did not take long for Carvella to realize that the stupid oaf, Rafiq, had once again lost something of great value. Worse still, the dingus had lost the camels this time, which were of even greater importance than their belongings. Even though they were the top adventurers of the kingdom, without the camels, they would still face great difficulty within the desert. Bang! Bang! Tahir hit Rafiq's head twice with his staff. "Hurry and pack up. Those camels shouldn't have gone far." Rafiq was not the kind of person who would obediently lower his head when he made a mistake. After being hit on the head, rage soared within his heart. He gripped his greatsword tightly and stared down at Tahir. "You dare hit me?" "Of course I do. Unless we manage to track down the camels, you'll be my mount instead." Realizing that a fight was about to break out, Carvella quickly retreated from the scene, and found herself a comfortable spot to enjoy the ensuing entertainment. She had long wanted to know how strong Tahir, who was known as the strongest mage among humans, was. Throughout all their adventures, Tahir had not once used his full strength to deal with his enemies. As such, Carvella had never been able to determine Tahir's true strength. However, the ensuing battle would pit him against Rafik, who was known as the strongest swordsman in the kingdom. Rafik had many honors. For example, he had once cut off a dragon's claw with a single swing of his greatsword. Nevertheless, he also carried some notoriety, as some would claim that he had exchanged his intelligence for his brute strength. Rafik raised his sword and hacked downwards. Halfway through his swing, however, blue electric currents had already wrapped around his body. The electric currents had triggered his muscles, and they had caused his huge body to twitch non-stop. Soon after, his greatsword had dropped onto the ground with a clang. It was not until Tahir withdrew his lightning spell that Rafik got up from the ground. "What a powerful lightning spell!" Carvella mentally praised. Despite being a spectator to the fight, Carvella did not even realize when Tahir had started to cast his spell. As expected of the former court magician, his spellcasting was so fast that I didn't even notice it. Or perhaps he does not even need to chant. Regardless, it proved that Tahir was indeed worthy of his honor. Throughout the history of mankind, there was not a single person who had come close to Tahir when it came to using lightning magic. However, a part of Carvella was also disappointed by how one-sided the battle was. After all, if they were to grievously wound one another, Carvella would emerge as the final winner. She thought to herself, Rafik's ruby greatsword would definitely fetch a good price. After all, it was a weapon that had once killed a dragon. The ruby that it was made from was the favorite item of red dragons, and it was stolen from a red dragon's nest. I could definitely make a killing off of it. On the other hand, the old man's corpse could also be sold for a good price. Anyone who studies magic in this continent would definitely be interested in the corpse of the legendary mage. Tahir's eyes were wide open, and electricity flowed through them. "Let's go. We must get the camels back before dawn." All right. You're the boss, old man. Just give the order," Carvella said perfunctorily. After a while of searching, they had located the runaway camels. However, the ones they found had already become corpses. None of the camels were spared. They had been reduced to minced meat. Their body parts were scattered all over the ground, and their blood had seeped deep into the sand. Only a bloody red desert stretched ahead of them. There were also strange bite marks on the camel's body. A large piece of their flesh had been gnawed away. What on earth happened here? Tahir was extremely furious. He used the tip of his staff to continuously hit Rafik's head. He vented all his anger on Rafik. However, now that Rafik knew that he could not beat him, he silently endured Tahir's beatings. "Good, our plan is ruined." Carvella looked at the camel's body and sighed in disappointment. "There goes our money. Why did we come all this way for nothing?" Without the camels, it was impossible to traverse the desert. It was still not too late to turn back. They could go to the village to recuperate and apologize for the deaths of the camels. Should the villagers voice any objections, they would kill the villagers and snatch their camels. By doing so, perhaps their adventure could continue. Rafik covered his head as the staff struck his head rhythmically. Due to his lowered head, however, Rafik noticed a small item on the ground. "What is this?" Rafik picked up a sharp tooth from the ground. Obviously, this was not the tooth of an ordinary beast. Carvella made her way over and noticed that the tooth looked rather familiar. "It's a dragon tooth." A moment later, the three of them reacted in unison. Rafik had spotted a dragon tooth. The three of them were adventurers with rich experience, and had participated in several battles with evil dragons. Tahir's road to fame began when he used lightning magic against a red dragon. In the end he had managed to beat it, a red dragon, which was famous for its lightning magic. The sapphire greatsword was also famous as its owner, Rafik. It was a divine weapon that had cut off a dragon's claws and head with a single slash. As for Carvella, she often carried a dismantled dragon-slaying ballista in her traveling pouch. The three of them had no relationship at all. They had only heard of each other's names, and had never seen each other in person. They had formed a team to cross the desert to the north of the kingdom to hunt dragons. This was due to a piece of news that had spread throughout the kingdom the previous month. The northern lord had written a letter to the king, saying that there were dragons in the snowy mountains in the north. It was said that the dragons had caused great casualties, and their actions had also dealt a huge blow to the locals' finances. Much to their pleasure, the rumored dragon was within the desert. It's still a baby dragon. Tahir caressed the dragon's teeth, as if he was weighing a heavy bag of gold coins. Oh! There's a crater there. They turned their gaze towards the direction that Rafik was pointing to. What they saw was a huge, charred crater. The crater was the size of a basketball court, and it was located some distance away from the dead camels. Tahir took out a handful of the charred coal from the pit, kneaded it into powder, and looked at it a couple of times. Red dragon, or a blue dragon? As a court mage that had fought against dragons many times, Tahir was certain that it was one of the two dragons. The crater was caused by a high-temperature move. The only type of dragons that met this condition were the fire-breathing blue dragons and the lightning-breathing red dragons. Moreover, seeing as there were no dead camels in the pit, it meant that the dragon that fired the blast was not experienced, as it was incapable of controlling its own abilities. It was very likely a dragon hatchling. Not only was a dragon hatchling extremely valuable, but it was also easy to kill, and it posed little threat. Although adult dragons were worth much more than dragon hatchlings, adult dragons were also much more dangerous to fight against. Meanwhile, capturing a drake was enough to let one live well off for several years. In comparison, a pure dragon's corpse could be sold for more than 10 times its weight in gold coins. As professional adventurers, the three of them knew the value of pure dragons like the back of their hands. I'll put it out here before any of you get any weird ideas. Tahir tapped the ground with his staff. The dragon's eyes are mine for the taking. Dragon eyes are indispensable magic material. The process of dividing the spoils had already begun, even though they had yet to hunt down the dragon hatchling. Naturally, Carvella did not fall behind, and she immediately chimed in. Then I want all of the dragon's claws. The arrows made from the dragon claws will make the dragon's claws can make my ballista unstoppable. Then Rafik thought long and hard about the body part he wanted, but he was immediately scolded by the other two. You're the fool who lost the camels in the first place. You should count your lucky stars that we're willing to split the gold obtained from selling the dragon's corpse to you. With that, the trio had settled their division of loot. The dragon's eyes, which contained rich magic, belonged to Tahir. The dragon's claws that was capable of tearing apart its own kind, were given to Carvella, who wished to upgrade her ballista. The remaining parts would be auctioned off for gold coins, and this would be the only part that Rafik was allowed to take part in. With their discussion settled, the three of them began to pursue their target. Tahir raised his arm. Wind Spirit, heed my call, and describe what you've witnessed. As a former court mage, Tahir's knowledge did not extend merely to lightning magic. Rather, he had only used his lightning magic as a tool for offense. In fact, every qualified mage, be it humans or magical creatures of other species, would definitely learn practical magic for convenience. The spell that Tahir had cast was called Wind Speak. It was a wind spell. It enabled him to converse with the wind spirits in the air, and it allowed him to detect things that were in contact with the wind. The desert was vast enough that a strong gust of wind could blow from one end to the other. As such, Wind Speak was the perfect spell for him to use, as it would enable him to look over the entire desert. There are two of them. Tahir suddenly opened his eyes and revealed a smile on his face. Through the spell he had just cast, Tahir realized that it was not just one dragon hatchling that killed the camels but two. This was undoubtedly good news. It meant that they could reap double the rewards. However, when the wind spirit returned, its body was crackling with the sound of electricity. This meant that his opponents were red dragons. This was bad news for Tahir, who excelled at lightning magic. After all, red dragons were particularly resistant towards lightning magic. However, they were only dragon hatchlings. No matter how powerful they were, they could not be compared to the court mage of the kingdom. We're rich. It's two red dragon hatchlings. Tahir laughed loudly as he ran north. By using lightning magic to stimulate his muscles, he was able to run faster than a regular person. Must be nice to know magic. Carvella shook her head. Only a mage like Tahir could find his target in such a vast desert. Nevertheless, so long as they followed Tahir, they were certain to locate their targets. Hurry up, idiots. Carvella and Rafik hurriedly followed behind Tahir. However, while passing the corpses of the camels, a small detail had come to Carvella's attention. Most of the camels' corpses had broken bones. Their bodies were broken in 90-degree angles. Blood and internal organs spewed out from the corners of their mouths, and there were bruises all over their bodies. They seemed to have been beaten to death. According to Tahir, the two dragon hatchlings were red dragons. Red dragons usually preferred to hide underground to launch an ambush, or they would use illusions to lure in their targets before attacking them. Details aside, their preferred way of hunting had involved using sneak attacks. Under normal circumstances, such lightning craters would not appear in red dragon hunting grounds. Moreover, red dragons were rather poor at hand-to-hand combat. Compared to using their claws to attack their prey, red dragons preferred to use magic. In that case, why were these camels beaten to death? We should be safe now, right? While Max flew, he made sure to look behind every few seconds. Ever since he realized that his sister had bitten an adventurer's badge, Max was constantly on alert. The adventurers must have lost their camels by accident. If these adventurers are rich, they probably wouldn't come looking for them. But then again, if they had money, why would they become adventurers? This world isn't a video game. Adventuring is a highly dangerous job. From this, Max determined that the adventurers would definitely come looking for the camels. As a dragon, adventurers were Max's natural enemies. There were a couple of reasons behind this. For example, there were idealists who hunted dragons for the sake of justice and order. On the other hand, there were those who were greedy, and had treated dragons as flying pouches of gold coins. In short, should dragons and adventurers cross paths, a deadly battle would certainly ensue. Max did not know how powerful those adventurers were. However, he doubted that they were rookies. Most rookies would have already been devoured by the beasts lying in the desert this far in. Backed by his 18 years of video gaming experience, Max was certain of this. Moreover, he was still a mere dragon hatchling. Although he was indeed a dragon, the difference of strength between dragon hatchlings and adult dragons was like a bicycle and a space shuttle. Those who were on the shuttle would not even notice the person on the bicycle, but the converse did not apply to the bicycle. That was how huge the difference between them was. "Brother, I'm not full yet." Mia puffed up her cheeks and complained behind Max. Max used his claws to press down Mia's puffed cheeks. "I told you to stop imitating me. If Mother sees you acting that way, she'll beat you to death." Max had been trying his best to restrain his human habits. Unexpectedly, however, Mia had noticed his human habits and attempted to imitate them. Worse still, she thought that his actions were very cool. "There's nothing we can do about that." Max sighed. "We must head back." Max reasoned that he would stand a chance against those adventurers if he was alone. After all, he was a transmigrator who possessed all sorts of cheats. Even if he was pushed to the end of his rope, he could just start a battle of existence against the adventurers. However, Mia was different. She had a weak physique, and she would definitely fail to hold on against the adventurers. At worst, she might even be killed in an instant. Why do we need to head back? Mia blinked her eyes and asked, "Are we in danger?" Max nodded and answered truthfully, "Yes, we have enemies coming after us." If memory serves, one of the traits of red dragons is to never back down, even in a losing fight. Max recalled the information he had read online from his previous life. It said that red dragons were very arrogant and they would only retreat when they were grievously wounded. Max remembered praising this particular characteristic back then. What noble behavior! However, now that he himself had become a red dragon, he merely chuckled at the thought. Retreat only when seriously wounded. How on earth can I escape safely if I retreat in that condition? Red dragons excelled at lightning and illusory magic. Unlike silver dragons, they were incapable of manipulating time and space. How could they treat the battlefield like a washroom and come and go as they desired? Moreover, with their weak physique, there were only two likely scenarios in a battle. The first was that they would win the battle unscathed, and the second was that they would be killed in a single hit. The noticeable lack of red dragons could most likely be attributed to this particular behavior. Brother, but I. Upon hearing the words enemy, danger, and so on, Mia's expression changed. After her initial shock, she then revealed her fangs that she had usually kept hidden, and her pupils had also become a thin vertical line. Brother, I want to tear them up. I want to eat them. I'm hungry. Mia's violent dragon personality was awakened at this moment. Slaughter and conquest were engraved in the genes of all dragons, and this held true, even for dragon hatchlings. Max slapped Mia's head heavily and returned Mia's vertical pupils to their normal shape. Eat, 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 is that all you know how to do? In that case, come and eat me then. Mia lowered her head. No. After taking a glance of Mia's dejected expression, Max heaved a sigh of relief. Although it was true that the dragon's personality of not retreating was very cool, had they really stayed on the scene, Max would most likely be injured heavily, but Mia would most likely perish. Whoosh! While Max was lost in his thoughts, he suddenly heard a whizzing sound. A huge crossbow arrow had brushed past him. They've already caught up. Although dragons lived in the dark, they needed to spot their prey from the air, and thus they had excellent eyesight. Max peered downwards. There was indeed an adventurer on the ground. That adventurer was wearing half-body armor. Her long hair was tied together, and a crazed smile hung on her face. Beside the adventurer, however, stood a 2-meter-tall ballista. The arrow from earlier was obviously fired from the ballista. It had almost struck him. What's that, brother? Mia had never seen such a contraption before. As such, she had no idea what it did. Despite that, the memories passed down from her ancestors were blaring alarms in her mind. Danger! Danger! Dragon vanquishing ballista. Naturally, Max recognized the ballista at first glance. Once again, this was attributed to his experience in video games. The ballista was 2 meters tall. The material that made up its bowstring was undoubtedly a dragon tendon. Through various pulley interactions, the dragon tendon was stretched back, and once fired, its arrows would also be imbued with magical bonuses. It possessed great firepower, so much so that even Agatha would feel threatened. Max did not have time to explain. He quickly pulled Mia and dived towards a sand dune. The sand dune was not a suitable shelter. At most, it had only served to block their pursuer's vision. It was incapable of blocking the bolts from the projectile. Nevertheless, it was the best option that Max had. Ha! A trace of doubt suddenly appeared on the celebrating Carvella's mind. Her ballista could also serve as a magic-powered skateboard when dismantled. It was for this reason that she had managed to catch up to the 2 dragon hatchlings before Tahir and Rafik. It was exactly as Tahir's intel had reported. There were indeed 2 red dragon hatchlings. The 2 dragon hatchlings were flying at a low altitude. Moreover, since their mother was nowhere to be seen, it meant that the 2 dragon hatchlings had no reinforcements to back them up. This was great news for Carvella. Carvella quickly assembled her ballista and prepared to fire her shot. Her ballista contained enough firepower to kill even ancient dragons. Moreover, her target was only 2 newborn dragons. Although the dragons were extremely powerful, it was precisely because of their strength that the dragons did not bother to use their brains in battle. Their tactical intelligence was like a mere toddler's when compared to an average human. There were many dragons that relied on their powerful draconic aura to fly straight in the sky. They wanted to let the whole world know of their existence. Those dragons would not change their directions. They did not slow down, nor did they accelerate. This made them easy shooting targets for Carvella, who possessed the dragon-vanquishing ballista. Killing a dragon hatchling was supposed to be an easy task that Carvella could do with her eyes closed. This was because dragon hatchlings did not possess the hard scales of adult dragons, nor would they realize how much threat her ballista had posed. She had shot down 5 dragon hatchlings before. So long as they were in range of her ballista, Carvella had never missed her shots. But didn't the 2 dragon hatchlings hid themselves earlier? Something's not right. Carvella recalled the scene from earlier. It seemed that the stronger of the 2 dragon hatchlings had dragged the other one down with it. That dragon hatchling looks like a newborn, but even so, it's already this cunning. Plus, dragons are supposed to be cold-blooded animals. They value their relatives less than their treasures. In order to obtain more treasure, they would not hesitate to kill their own brethren. That stronger dragon hatchling protected its own kind. When you grow up, you will definitely become a famous red dragon. Unfortunately for you, however, you won't survive tonight. Carvella twisted the gears on her ballista and lowered the muzzle. With her sights locked onto the sand dune that Max had escaped to earlier, she then placed down a crossbow bolt that was made from a dragon claw. Then, she pulled back the dragon tendon bowstring. The fine yellow sand that blew past his face, while hiding behind the sand dune, had imbued Max with a sense of déjà vu. This feels like an FPS 1 game. Back when he was still a human, Max played a lot of shooting games. The ones that were developed properly would allow their players to shoot through walls. Wall-penetrating bullets. Oh no, this is bad. Max reacted hastily. Although the sand dune would obscure his opponent's vision, it was incapable of blocking the ballista's shot. He was certain that the adventurer was already aiming at the sand dune, and they were raring to kill both of them in a single strike. Duck. Max slid down the sand dune and pressed Mia's head down at the same time. Whoosh! A crossbow bolt flew over their heads and shattered the sand dune, sending fine sand flying. That was close. Max saw that half of the sand dune had been cut off. Had he reacted 1 second later, his head would have already disappeared. Suddenly, an idea came to Max's mind. He cleared his throat and deliberately let out 2 pained, but different cries. Caw. A-A-A-O-O. Just as Carvella was about to load the next bolt, she heard 2 screams from behind the sand dune. Oh! I managed to hit both of them. She was well aware of her ballista's power. Even if there were 10 dragon hatchlings stacked together, her ballista was capable of turning all of them into a kebab. As such, she was not surprised that she had managed to injure both dragons. Carvella was extremely happy. A single dragon-vanquishing bolt had only cost a dozen or so gold coins, but the corpses of 2 dragon hatchlings was enough to turn her life around. Moreover, the stronger of the 2 dragon hatchlings had also caught Carvella's attention since early on. This was the first time she had ever seen a dragon, much less a dragon hatchling, use such a tactic. After all, dragons were proud creatures. Finding cover was considered as a sin for them. At this moment, there was only one thought in Carvella's mind, which was to quickly inspect the 2 dragon hatchlings' bodies to determine whether there was any difference between them. With a cavalry saber in hand, Carvella slowly approached the sand dune from the side. After narrowly escaping death, Max secretly stuck out half of his head to observe the situation outside. Sure enough, the adventurer was fooled and thought that they had been shot dead. The adventurer was not on high alert at the moment, and she had left behind her ballista. Even when compared to dragon hatchlings, a human's body was extremely frail. Even the most powerful warrior was useless against a dragon hatchling's dragon breath. In a sense, Max had created an opportunity for them. However, he had only one chance. After all, adventurers who dared to challenge dragons were most likely battle-hardened veterans. Although there were more humans than dragons, the reason behind their numbers was due to their strong reproductive ability. When humans fought against one another, it was no more gentler than when fighting dragons. Especially in this dangerous fantasy world, the humans who overestimated themselves had long disappeared from this world. Those who were left behind were definitely capable individuals. This was something that Max, who had been a human for 18 years, was certain about. Should he miss his strike, the cunning adventurer would definitely return to their ballista quickly and fire it continuously. However, if he could manage to land his dragon breath on the adventurer, they could then escape from danger. There was a problem with this plan though, and it was his dragon breath. Unfortunately, he had poor aptitude for magic, and as a result, he doubted that his lightning breath was capable of killing the adventurer. What about Mia's then? In terms of strength, her dragon breath could annihilate a group of elephants in a single shot, much less a human. However, upon recalling Mia's terrible accuracy, he immediately gave up. Mia did not know what had happened. She also imitated Max and sighed. Sigh. Sigh. Behind the sand dune, two dragon hatchlings sighed. One was struggling to survive, and the other thought that it was cool to imitate her brother. Sister, don't move. Close your eyes. Fortunately, Max had yet another bright idea. He asked Mia to close her eyes, and Mia obediently did as he said. Then, Max went behind Mia and stretched out his front claws to hold Mia's little head. Since he was incapable of firing a useful dragon breath, and Mia had poor accuracy, his idea was to help Mia target. Had the internet existed in this fantasy world, Max would definitely have started a thread upon returning home. Discussion using my sister as a rocket launcher. Back to reality. At this moment, Max calmed down his breathing while adjusting Mia's head to locate an appropriate angle. Max planned to use Mia's dragon breath to blow the adventurer into charred meat the moment she appeared in his field of vision. Sister, get ready. When I say fire, unleash your lightning breath. Oh, okay. Mia answered timidly. She did not know what she was doing. As such, she felt slightly embarrassed. After all, even after going through all of her ancestors' memories, Mia had not found any similar actions. None of her ancestors have ever carried out this action before. However, since it was her brother's orders, she obeyed them. Mia had never forgotten Max's help in breaking her eggshell. Such an act was considered taboo for dragons. It was only right and proper for the weak to suffocate to death within their eggs. Moreover, the moment Mia took her first breath of fresh air, she felt no other emotion than the joy of being alive. Perhaps her pride as a dragon was already shattered by her brother at that time. Get ready. Max held his breath and tried hard to steady his claws. As an experienced FPS gamer, Max knew that if he were to fire his shot after the enemy appeared, it would be too late. He needed to fire a few seconds before the enemy's appearance to achieve the greatest results. 3. Max remembered the adventurer's walking speed. Unless she had abruptly changed her pacing, she would fall under his crosshairs within 3 seconds. 2. Unless something unexpected were to occur, this would be Max's first time killing a human throughout his 2 lives. Ever since he discovered that he had wings and could speak the language of dragons, Max knew that this day would come sooner or later. 1. However, he did not feel any reluctance in his heart. It did not matter if he was a human in his previous life. It did not matter if she was a fellow countryman. Right now, he only wanted to live. He wanted to bring his sister back home. Fire. The moment Max spoke those words, Mia opened her mouth. Lightning danced in her mouth, and a deafening blast that drowned out all other noises was unleashed. Bam! An electric arc as thick as a tree shot out from Mia's mouth, and towards the direction that Max had set. At the opposing end of the electric arc, the adventurer appeared. La la la, I want to buy a big house, upgrade my ballista, and... Carvella hummed a merry tune, as she happily skipped forward. Dismembering 2 dragon hatchlings would bring her a huge amount of wealth, and it would provide her with a long period of financial relief. In the next moment, however, a strong flash of light drowned her vision. Even in death, she did not understand where the light had come from. She assumed that it was God punishing her for all the bad deeds that she had done. Phew! Max let out a long sigh of relief and stared at the scene before him. After ensuring that the adventurer was truly dead, his body visibly relaxed. The adventurer had turned into a piece of charcoal. Had Max not seen how she looked like back when she was alive and kicking, he definitely would not have identified her as a human being. She was charred so badly that she no longer seemed edible. Let's go, Mia. We're going home. Even though they had already taken care of their pursuer, Max dared not linger in the desert for a second longer. After all, humans were one of the hardest species to deal with. Humans always fought in groups. Max would not naively believe that by taking care of one human, his pursuers would stop giving chase. Rather, he believed that it was more likely that her compatriots would seek to avenge her. Mia obediently followed behind Max. Before she left, she took another look at the wreckage. That piece of black material was edible, and it was full of nutrients. However, since her brother was not interested in it, and did not order her to eat it, Mia decided not to dwell on it. She followed her brother obediently. Damn it, why did another one appear? Max did not even take 2 steps before spotting a huge figure walking out of the desert. The moon was huge, even by dragon standards. It was a 2-meter-tall human swordsman. On his shoulder was a giant greatsword the size of a door. The sword was silvery white, and only the hilt had an eye-catching ruby embedded in it. Wow! A ruby! Mia's eyes widened when she saw the ruby. To a qualified dragon, the treasures in their cave meant everything to them. To dragons, the treasures in their caves were more important than their own lives. Upon spotting the light emitted by the ruby, she immediately forgot her hunger and fatigue. She had lost control of her body as she ran forward as if she was in a trance. Come back. I'll buy you a box of this crap. Max grabbed Mia's wings and brought her back. Max had inferred the warrior's way of fighting via Mia's reaction. The greatsword that the warrior carried was polished like a smooth mirror, and the ruby embedded in it was imbued with light magic that made it stand out. The combination of effects had made it an irresistible temptation to any red dragon. However, if any dragon were to fall for the bait, the human swordsman would mercilessly slice off the head of those dragons. Since Max had great physical strength, picking up Mia was as easy as picking up a chick. Mia's eyes were lifeless. Her legs were still dangling in the air, and she was still puffing forward. This was the hypnotic effect of the ruby greatsword. It had an irresistible allure to red dragons. Max was at a loss at what to do. He tried everything in his arsenal of human memories to snap Mia back to reality, but to no avail. Fine, I'll head back then. I don't need you anymore, Mia. No. Mia was shocked. Her eyes focused again, and tears welled up in her eyes. Seeing that Mia had returned to normal, Max did not have time to explain. He said firmly, "Close your eyes." The reason why he wanted Mia to close her eyes was because he was afraid that Mia would take the initiative to aim. Max had already seen how bad Mia's aim was. Using the same trick, Max turned Mia's head again. He adjusted the trajectory and aimed at the human warrior. Fire! With a whoosh, a bolt of lightning breath shot towards the human warrior. Normally, even the dragon breath of a young dragon would be highly lethal. It was not something an ordinary person could withstand, not to mention Mia was extremely talented in magic. However, the warrior was no ordinary human. The following scene had left Max speechless. The human swordsman did not dodge, and instead, he held his greatsword in front of him. The lightning breath that hit the greatsword instantly dispersed. What the hell is that? Max was a little confused. What kind of steel does this world have that's capable of dispersing a red dragon's lightning? Something's wrong. Even if the sword had conducted the electricity elsewhere, it would still hurt the person holding it, right? The human swordsman was not affected at all. He picked up his greatsword again, and made his way over leisurely. Max narrowed his eyes and stared at the giant sword. He saw the magic runes that were carved on the greatsword. Lightning Immunity Rune. Ruby Light Amplification Rune. Illusion Immunity Rune. Max's ancestors' memories had informed him of what runes were. They were powerful carvings that were imbued with a great amount of magic. They were capable of bestowing weapons, armor, or other items with extremely powerful attributes. Generally speaking, a weapon that contained a single rune was worthy of becoming a treasure. Even dragons would collect such a weapon to fill up their treasury. However, there were 3 runes engraved on the greatsword. Their functions were to enhance the ruby's light, to allow the blade to block lightning, and to prevent the wielder from being affected by illusions. Ruby, illusions, and lightning. This combination. Why is it so specific? Fortunately, the human swordsman was wearing heavy plate armor, and due to how heavy the greatsword was, he moved rather slowly. This gave Max ample time to read its engravings. At the bottom of the blade, Max found the sword's name engraved there. Red Dragon Slayer. Red Dragon Slayer. What the hell is a Red Dragon Slayer? The moment Max read the greatsword's inscription, Max's thoughts were instantly filled with the memories of his ancestors. Since he was a pure dragon, he had inherited some of his ancestors' memories from the moment he was born. From a cost-effectiveness standpoint, it was clear that the door-sized greatsword was not meant to be used against humans. Instead, it was more likely to be used against large creatures. In Max's memories, the greatsword was specially made to kill red dragons. It had accumulated several accolades, and at one point, it had even managed to slay an ancient red dragon. Max was only a dragon hatchling at that moment, and the threat that he was facing was capable of slaying even ancient dragons. He was clearly outmatched. Move! Move! Max grabbed Mia and ran away without looking back. After retreating a few steps, he then flapped his wings and took off. Perhaps out of arrogance, or perhaps due to his heavy armor and heavy weapon encumbering him, the human swordsman still walked slowly. Max had no desire to fight an opponent that strong at such a young age. Even if he had combined his height with Mia's, they would still be smaller than the greatsword. Worse still, the greatsword was specially forged just to deal with red dragons. Ha! They're running away. Rafik was confused. He did not understand why the 2 dragon hatchlings were fleeing. The Red Dragon Slayer functioned exactly as its name had implied. It was specially designed to deal with red dragons. The greatsword was immune to lightning, and it did not conduct electricity. It could even be used as a shield. This, combined with the blessing of being immune to illusions, had made even adult dragons helpless against it. Of course, its most important component was the ruby embedded on its hilt. By using magic to amplify the crimson glow of the ruby, it was capable of distracting red dragons, and at best, it was even capable of completely crippling red dragons with weak willpower. Generally speaking, it was more than enough to deal with dragon hatchlings. Whenever dragon hatchlings spotted the ruby, they would lose all their cognitive functions. They would rush headlong into his blade, and he would chop their heads off with a single slash. Rafik had utilized this method to kill more than a dozen dragon hatchlings. He had made a great contribution to the security of the kingdom. Rafik respected the Red Dragon's style of fighting to the death. After all the Red Dragons that he encountered had always accepted his challenge. They would gladly fight enemies stronger than themselves, and they would only retreat when they were gravely wounded. However, more often than not, the Red Dragons would continue fighting until their very last breath. As a warrior, Rafik admired this kind trait of the Red Dragons. At the same time, as an adventurer who fought for money, their behavior was highly beneficial as well. After all, half of an adventurer's troubles came from not being able to defeat their prey. The other half of their worries was from being unable to capture their fleeing prey. However, they need not fear the second issue when it came to Red Dragons. Even if they knew that it was a losing fight, the Red Dragons would continue battling to the bitter end. Even if he knew that he could not win, he would still have to face the prey head-on. They were a great joy to adventurers. Rafik's problem, however, was that the dragon hatchlings had reacted completely different from what he had in mind. Aren't they supposed to flee only when they're heavily injured? He was off to a great start too. He had successfully grabbed the attention of one of the dragon hatchlings the moment he appeared, after all. However, his joy was instantly crushed when the other dragon hatchling held it back. And they're running away now. Since when did Red Dragons act in this manner? Rafik thought long and hard, or at least he tried to, but he could not make sense of the situation. After all, his preys were dragon hatchlings. The intelligence of dragon hatchlings were supposedly lower than his own. Why did they run when they knew that they were at a disadvantage? Rafik had a string of questions in his mind. His money bags were taking off right before his eyes. He could no longer afford to walk at a leisure pace. His muscles tightened and he immediately increased his pace. Now that we're in the air, we should be safe. The moment he said those words, however, he suddenly heard a rhythmic thumping sound. He turned around and looked. That human swordsman that was wearing heavy plate armor that was at least twice his body weight was running as fast as a cheetah. He was like a tank in human form. Brother. Brother. What is that? Mia had also noticed the sound. Upon turning around, however, she was stunned once more. Max turned Mia's head back. Children shouldn't look at such things. A fully armed, 2-meter-tall human holding a giant greatsword that was capable of slicing dragons into mincemeat was running at the speed of a sports car. This was an unbelievable scene for most dragon hatchlings. Moreover, Max was also worried that Mia would succumb to the allure of the ruby once more. As such, he turned his sister's head back around. The only thing she needed to focus on was on flying forward. Max doubted that the human warrior was able to reach them in the air. After all, the weight of his armor would definitely hold him back. Moreover, they were only 10 minutes away from their lair, the location in which their mother, Agatha, was dwelling at. We'll be safe once we return to the lair. That was what Max thought. However, the memories of his deceased ancestors had shown some of them being beheaded by the giant greatsword. In other words, even someone as powerful as Agatha might lose against the Red Dragon Slayer. Upon recalling Agatha's silly smile while holding the jewels back home, Max was certain that Agatha would be bewitched by the ruby greatsword. Should Agatha lose, then wouldn't that mean the end of my life as a red dragon? Maybe I should start a battle of existence. Max thought. However, he was trying to hold onto it as a last resort. After all, if he were to use it too often, he might arouse the suspicion of the gods. But it's not like I have any other choice. While he flew, Max suddenly spotted something on the ground. That's the dragon vanquishing ballista. The first adventurer who appeared before them was an archer. She specialized in using a massive ballista to slay dragons. Upon recalling the ballista's firepower, Max came up with an idea. While other dragon hatchling might be oblivious as to what a ballista was, the same did not apply to Max. As someone who had played plenty of video games in the past, he was certain that he could operate it. Moreover, seeing as the materials that comprised the ballista was made from dragons, Max was certain that it possessed the firepower he desired. A ballista used to kill a dragon must be able to easily pierce through the scales of a dragon. Moreover, its projectiles must be launched at high speeds, as the dragons would be able to avoid it otherwise. Such a powerful weapon must be able to easily pierce through plate armor, right? Keep on flying, sister. After saying those words to Mia, Max suddenly turned around and separated from her. It had happened all too suddenly, and it had left Mia in a state of panic. She constantly shouted, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" Max used a more forceful tone as he shouted, "Just keep flying." Once he was certain that Mia had obeyed his orders and had continued flying, Max heaved a sigh of relief. There's only one enemy. Thus it's best that we split up. By doing so, we can force the warrior to only go after one of us. Max had already planned everything out. If the enemy had gone after him, he would then lead the warrior to an isolated spot to start a battle of existence. Once that happened, he would use the prime version of himself to deal with the threat. Conversely, if the enemy had gone after Mia instead, Max would operate the ballista to annihilate the warrior. Huh? Why did they suddenly split up? Rafik noticed that one of the dragon hatchlings had suddenly deviated from their flight path, and had gone towards a different direction, while the dragon hatchling was following its original trajectory. Ha ha ha, they must be afraid of me. Rafik mentally rejoiced. Those two dragon hatchlings must have realized they're doomed, so they decided to go separate ways to ensure at least one of them survives. Haha, they must have racked their brains to think of ways to survive. But upon realizing the strength I possess, they realized that their fates were sealed. Rafik sped up in excitement. He enjoyed the feeling of dominating his opponents. At the same time, however, Rafik had also forgotten that the two dragon hatchlings were unlike any other dragon he had ever encountered. Max had already arrived at the ballista. At such a distance, he realized that the ballista was larger than he had even imagined. It was hard to imagine what kind of physical strength the adventurer had possessed that enabled her to carry such a huge weapon around with her. The ballista was 3 meters tall, and Max realized that it could be disassembled. Max felt a certain affinity towards the ballista, and upon giving it some thought, he realized that it was due to the materials that it was made of. After all, it was made from the body parts of his fellow brethren. The dragon bones were combined with other materials to form the ballista's frame. The ballista's arms were made out of dragon bones, and the fine threads that formed the bowstring were made of dragon tendons that had been hammered thousands of times. Meanwhile, the arrowhead of the ballista's bolt was made using dragon claws. The scope was made out of magic crystal, and it seemed to have contained a dragon's retina. The ballista was essentially a weapon made from dragons to deal with dragons. Fortunately, although Max was a dragon, he was not particularly attached to his brethren, and as such, he was not particularly mad. On the other hand, should any other dragon notice how despicable the weapon was, they would not hesitate to destroy it. Max picked up the ballista's bolt and attempted to slot it into the magazine. Although he had never actually used a ballista before, the mechanism looked rather simple, and thus, he could more or less understand how to operate it. After placing the bolt, Max extended his front claws and twisted the turntable that was meant to tighten the bowstring. As the turntable rolled in circles, the bowstring gradually became taut. All that was left was the final step to accurately land the shot. It was also the most difficult step, as it was Max's first time operating such a contraption. Fortunately, however, his brethren had come to his aid. The scope that consisted of a dragon's retina had a supplementary aiming function. As long as one looked at the scope, they would be able to see a thin red line. It was the trajectory of the ballista bolt. This brought Max great convenience. After all, as a veteran video game player, he was very familiar with the parabolic trajectory of long-range firearms. Max adjusted the ballista and targeted a spot where the swordsman was bound to pass. Once he was certain that his preparations were complete, he fired his shot. Boom! The sound of the ballista firing was not the silent whizzing as expected of an aerodynamic projectile. Instead, it was more like a missile. It had unleashed a booming explosion. Regardless, the battle had already ended the moment Max fired the bolt. Should he successfully strike his target, then he could attribute it to his good luck. However, even if he were to miss, it mattered little to him. The ballista's loud explosion would undoubtedly attract the attention of the human swordsman. Once that happened, Max was certain that the human would go after him. After all, he was an anomaly among red dragons, as no other red dragon was capable of using technology. Once the human arrived, Max would then start a battle of existence with the human. Perfect. Rafik suddenly heard something explode. He turned his head and saw a huge shadow soaring across the sky. Isn't that Carvella's ballista bolt? Carvella had gone ahead of the party, and he had lost track of where she had run off to. And now, she's aiming at her own party members. This made Rafik extremely mad. However, upon closer look, he realized that a red dragon hatchling was manning the ballista. It was the dragon hatchling who had fired the bolt. A dragon? Since when are dragons capable of using technology? Rafik was stunned. After all, the dragons were the embodiment of power. Their combat strength was already very high. They often looked down on the humans, who were constantly improving themselves via technology. Moreover, the intelligence of dragons was by no means low. They had the ability to equip themselves with the strongest armor, or they would use magic crystals to improve their magic. However, more often than not, the dragons had preferred to rely on their own abilities. As such, even if powerful weapons were to fall into the hands of dragons, the dragons would store them in their treasure hoard. They would never use them. That was how it was supposed to go. Rafik had long since taken this as fact. However, the fact that a dragon hatchling was operating Carvella's ballista had flipped Rafik's world upside down. Who was the one that said dragons were incapable of using technology? It had learned how to operate the ballista in less than a minute. Should news of the dragon hatchling's behavior reach the human kingdom, chaos would ensue. Dragons were already powerful enough in both their physique and magic. If they were to start using weapons, would they not become invincible? Imagine a dragon with impervious armor strapped over its already hard scales, as well as a 100-meter-long spear within its sharp claws. Combined with its powerful magic, it was capable of slaughtering several human kingdoms without much issue. Rafik quickly stopped. He wanted to dodge the huge bolt, but he was carrying too much weight. Moreover, due to the quicksand-like behavior of the ground he was on, he was unable to stop immediately. As such, he was bound to collide into the ballista bolt. Rafik raised his great sword with the hopes of blocking the ballista shot with it. However, the ballista bolt contained enough firepower to slay dragons. It could easily pierce the scales that the dragons were so proud of, let alone a plate armor made by humans. The sound of the great sword intercepting with the crossbow bolt unleashed a huge shockwave. It sent yellow sand flying everywhere. What amazing firepower! Yellow sand fell from the sky, and a thin veil of yellow had surrounded the site of contact. Within the yellow rain of sand, however, the human warrior still had not fallen. His figure slowly approached Max. Max could not help but be awed by the human warrior. The bolt had pierced through the great sword, and it had even shattered it. After all, it was merely the bane of red dragons. In terms of sturdiness, there was much to be desired. The crossbow bolt that pierced through the great sword has also left a gaping hole in the human warrior's body. Through this huge hole, Max was able to witness the scene behind him. Max had succeeded. The human swordsman was already doomed. However, the swordsman did not collapse obediently. He dragged his body with his last dredges of strength, and staggered towards Max. "You pay. Great sword." Even in his final moments, the human swordsman was still muttering about his great sword. Max watched from afar. He wanted to confirm that these cunning humans were really dead before searching their corpses. However, even from such a distance, Max could clearly see that the great sword had shattered. What a pity. But the ruby on it might still be usable. In a way, rubies were a form of currency among the dragons. After all, no normal red dragon would reject rubies. Of course, Max was an exception. Animals would die for their food, whereas dragons would die to retain their wealth. Through his inherited memories, Max had seen many instances where the dragons had paid with their lives just to protect their treasure. Max had no desire of repeating their mistakes. At this point, he had already killed 2 dangerous adventurers in a row to protect his sister, Mia. Mia was also a silly little dragon. After listening to Max's order to continue flying, she had really done so without ever looking back. Under the moonless sky, Mia's figure was only a small outline. Max could not help but feel gratified. The 2 adventurers they encountered were professional dragon slayers. Even his mother, Agatha, might not be able to do anything about it. As such, the fact that he had managed to defeat both of them was truly a great feat. Although the methods he employed were rather dirty, Max had no other choice as his opponents were far stronger than him. Clap, clap, clap. Max suddenly heard the sound of applause coming from behind him. He suddenly looked back and saw an old man with a gray beard standing in the desert, clapping his hands. Well done, little dragon. After running for a while, Tahir suddenly slowed down and allowed his 2 party members to surpass him. After all, his body was already old and he could not withstand long periods of physical activity. Moreover, the matter of receiving the spoils of war did not employ the first-come, first-served concept. Even if he were the first to kill the dragon hatchling first, so what? Among the 3 of them, Tahir was the strongest. As such, he did not mind showing off his powerful strength to obtain the largest portion of the spoils. However, what Tahir did not expect was that Carvela and Rafik were already dead. One had to know that the 3 of them had gathered together to fight the rumored dragon in the north. Along the way, many people begged them to kill the dragon, and they had also received a lot of commission fees. The wealth obtained for killing the dragon was enough for Tahir to spend the rest of his life in peace. In a way, their party was formed with the specific goal of slaying the rumored dragon of the north. No ordinary dragon would pose a threat to them, and at worst, they would only feel slightly pressured against ancient dragons. However, both of his party members had died at the hands of a dragon hatchling. Tahir looked at the dragon hatchling in front of him with great interest. He had encountered countless dragons throughout his life, be they ancient dragons or dragon hatchlings, and as such, his experience was very rich. Through appearance alone, the red dragon hatchling before him did not seem all that special. It was at most a little bigger than its brethren, but nothing more. However, from the way it fought, the dragon hatchling was clearly very different from all other dragons. What an eye-opener. To think that you would learn how to operate a ballista. Tahir said with a smile. Generally speaking, pure dragons were capable of understanding the human tongue. This could be attributed to the memories of their ancestors they had inherited. Moreover, for Max, the language used by the humans on this continent was very similar to English. This, coupled with the memory of his ancestors, had enabled Max to easily understand the mage's words. However, Max did not answer immediately. He was afraid that if he said too much, he would expose the fact that he was a transmigrator. Secondly, he wanted to confirm the adventurer's goal before all else. As such, he observed quietly. Oh? You're not going to show off. Tahir stroked his beard, and was once again surprised by the behavior of the young dragon. Usually, dragons would try to flaunt their strength whenever possible. To an adult dragon, this was a way for them to flex their strength. However, in the case of dragon hatchlings, it was to protect themselves. However, the dragon hatchling before Tahir did not utter a single sound. It just stood there quietly. Its gaze was not like that of an ordinary dragon hatchling, which was supposed to be confused and ignorant. Instead, it had an indescribable depth and a crafty look. Hee, is it a mutated breed? Did its intelligence increase due to the mutation? The more Tahir looked at the dragon hatchling, the more he liked it. A large body meant that its body was very healthy. To be able to kill 2 veteran adventurers on his own, although the 2 adventurers had died due to carelessness, had proven that the dragon's intelligence rivaled that of humans. The dragon hatchling would undoubtedly grow to become the greatest threat to the human kingdom once it grew up. Perhaps it might even change the current world structure. It was possible. Hee, I see that you have extraordinary talent, little dragon. I'll give you a chance. Tahir held the magic staff in front of him, and a majestic electric current wrapped around his body. He was not using any spells. He was merely allowing the mana within his body flow casually, and yet, he was still able to create such a majestic scene. Tahir roared, "Little dragon, become my familiar, and I will allow you to live." Lightning magic had no effect on the red dragon. Tahir was well aware of this. However, he wanted to prove his strength to the little dragon. He wanted to prove that it was easy for him to kill the little dragon. Familiar. A familiar was a creature that was subservient to a powerful being. It was equivalent to being a servant of a powerful being. The inferior drakes were commonly used by humans as mounts. However, at times, these drakes would also chosen to become the familiar of humans. A pure dragon's arrogant character would never allow itself to become someone else's familiar. Even if they were willing to become a human's familiar, they would immediately be abandoned by the evil dragon goddess, Tiamat. They would be viewed as a disgrace by the entire dragon race, and they might even be pursued by the other dragons. The moment this thought appeared on Max's mind, he immediately rejected the old man's proposal. He knew that he did need a backer, but he felt that the dragon mother, Tiamat, was a much better choice. Becoming a human's familiar. This sentence was a great insult to any dragon. Max had always thought that his way of thinking was different from his brethren, but upon hearing those words, he immediately twitched with anger. Compared to the cunning humans, I still feel that my dragon lair is warmer. So, I refuse. Max spoke in the human tongue because he knew that the other party did not understand the language of the dragon race. Although Max was full of anger, he did not display it on the surface. The magician in front of him exuded a dangerous aura that was obviously stronger than the previous two adventurers. Max was certain that he was a powerful foe that could not be easily dealt with. If he could end this peacefully, it would be the best outcome. Oh my God. Oh my God. You can speak. This is a baby dragon that can speak the human tongue. Tahir's eyes were wide open. He did not care about his image and waved his hands wantonly. The dragon race was a very strange race. An adult dragon's intelligence was similar to that of a human, but the advantage of the dragon race was that their knowledge of magic was much more profound. Moreover, the dragon race was also a race that did not need to learn at all. Their inherited memories had provided them with all they needed to know. Moreover, due to their pride, they had chosen not to speak any other language aside from their obscure one. This led to many dragons being incapable of speaking the human tongue. Those who did, had only learned it by chance. However, it was unheard of for a dragon to speak human language at the level of a young dragon. Even though they had inherited their ancestors' memory, the human tongue, which was considered to be trash to the dragons, was not allowed to be passed down one. If Tahir had managed to obtain such a dragon, he would never sell it away. This is an epoch-making discovery. This child is a unique case among the dragons. Tahir was extremely excited. He could not even control his emotions. There was a crazed look in his eyes as he spoke the following words, "Ah. Little dragon, your grammar needs working on. I can read you a bedtime story every day to correct your grammar. Little dragon, do you realize how lucky you are for me to give so much attention to you? Once you grow up, I will ride on your back and take to the skies. A talking dragon as my pet. That's simply wonderful. I will catch a spouse for you. If I can't, you can transform into a human. Forgive me, but are you a male or a female?" Max's brows tightened. He felt that the old man was very difficult to deal with. The old man in front of him seemed to have gone mad. His behavior was crazy, his words did not make any sense, and static electricity was jumping all over his body. Max was certain that he had made his intentions clear. This was not out of the pride that was expected of dragons. Rather, it was due to his former human nature that wished to live a life of freedom. He did not want to be bounded by so many rules. I said I refuse. Max said slowly. The old man in front of him suddenly stopped moving. He was stunned for a while before he let out a long breath. Ah, you've refused. You've disappointed me. Tahir lifted his staff and raised it over his head. Lightning flowed across his body. It gradually picked up speed until it began leaping frantically. Instantly, the dark desert night was illuminated by him, by a bright white light that consumed everything. Lightning, obey my call. Morph into arrows and drown the skies. Following Tahir's incantation, the lightning on his body gradually stabilized. They gathered together and formed a group of arrows. The number of arrows was densely packed. Just as the incantation had stated, their numbers had drowned the entire sky. The section of the desert had become as bright as daytime. Not good. Upon seeing this scene, Max realized that he was in a pinch. Unless he was mistaken, the spell that the old man had cast was one of the advanced spells, Lightning Arrow Rain. It was also one of the specialties of the red dragons, but not every red dragon was capable of casting it. Red dragons with poor aptitude for magic were incapable of using this move. Moreover, the only magic that Max could cast was called Lightning Arrow. One was a rain of arrows, and the other was a single arrow. It was obvious who was stronger. System. Display his attributes. A virtual interfaces appeared on Tahir's body and displayed his stats. Race, human. Current rank, diamond rank. Age, 86. Maximum lifespan, 165. Attack, 10, normal human 12. Spell strength, 4,399, normal human 3. Defense, 4,369, normal human 5. Speed, 2,300, normal human 8. Magic, Frost Arrow, Ice Spear, Ice Intelligence, Arcane Intelligence, Frost Nova, Frost Barrier, Blizzard, Summon Water Elemental, Raging Firestorm, Lightning Arrow Rain, Thunderstorm, Lightning Paralysis, Thunderclap, Light Affinity, Lightning Immunity, Thunderous Divine Retribution, Punishment, 10 million volts of thunder. Please click here to see more. Other than his attack power, all other attributes of the old man were extremely powerful. However, as a magician, he did not need a high attack stat in the first place. He only needed to rely on his spells, after all. Moreover, the densely packed magic column had occupied Max's entire field of vision. Wind, fire, water, thunder, and earth. The old man knew spells of all elements. This was especially true for lightning-based magic. He had almost reached the peak of perfection. This was because all of the old man lightning-based moves had existed in Max's memories. This meant that the old man knew some lightning spells that not even all red dragons were capable of pulling off. Max also noticed that the old man's rank was diamond rank. Dragons usually use terms like ancient dragons, adult dragons, or archaic dragon to evaluate their strength. Humans also possessed an evaluation system of their own. Iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, obsidian. This ranking was in ascending order, and the higher one's rank, the stronger they were. Reaching silver rank was already the upper limit of an ordinary person. Those with better talent could reach gold rank. Gold to platinum rank was a watershed. There were very few humans who could reach platinum. However, the decline from platinum to diamond was an even more precipitous drop. Most humans who reached the diamond rank had become a pillar of the human kingdom. As for the obsidian rank humans, they were rare existences that only appeared a few times throughout the history of the continent. However, every time they appeared, it meant that the humans would rise up in a short period of time. If Max's current strength were to be measured by the standards of humans, it was probably between bronze and silver. He had only defeated the two adventurers from before purely because they had underestimated him. They did not expect a dragon hatchling to outsmart them. "I'm finished," Max thought to himself. The enemy in front of him, the diamond rank powerhouse, was not someone that he could deal with at his current level of strength. Worse still, after listing all of the human's stats, the system had also attached a comment. Remark, "Thank you for your companionship throughout this journey, let us meet again in your next life." Meet again in the next life. Even his own system had given up on him. While Max was lost in his thoughts, he suddenly felt an electric current pass through his body. The arrow rain formed by the lightning in the sky quickly poured down. However, Max did not even have time to react. They were too fast. They were so fast that even the eyes of a dragon could see them clearly. Electric currents passed through Max's body one after another, and Max had no way to escape. He did not even have a place to dodge. Fortunately, as red dragons were naturally resistant to the lightning attribute, the attacks had only left small scratches on him, and they did not cause any real harm. This is merely a demonstration of his strength. Max knew that the old man was only toying with him. He did not mean to kill him immediately. He wanted to use his overwhelmingly superior magic to force Max to surrender. As the rain of lightning arrows continued to strike him, Max determined that it was time to use the battle of existence. "As you can see, Mother Tiamat, my life has been seriously threatened, and I have no way to overcome this difference in strength. But I have not lost my will to fight. For the continuation of the Red Dragon's bloodline. For your eminence to forever resound throughout the world. The battle of existence must not be abused." This was something that Max was very clear about. After all, it was a secret technique from ancient times. At the same time, it was also the fastest way to become a god. In order to prevent it from being abused, the gods were very cautious about its usage. The prerequisite for activating it was that one side needed to be in a fatal threat. Only then would they be allowed to activate the battle of existence. Otherwise, if they used it casually, they would be disapproved by the gods and they would be punished. At this moment, Max was forced into such a desperate situation. The lightning arrow rain was powerful, had a wide range, and was extremely dense. Unless they were a red dragon that was naturally immune to lightning, even ancient dragons would perish to the attack. Furthermore, Max was still a dragon hatchling that was only a month old. I, Max Agatha Hill Alexander. I propose a battle of existence to Tahir. I am willing to bet my life, wealth, talent, and even existence on a battle of past, present, and future. Following Max's declaration, the night sky that was originally lit up by lightning arrows instantly dimmed and turned into black and white. The origin space was independent of the outside world, and everything in there seemed to be stationary. All the lightning bolts were pushed out by the origin space. What's this? Tahir was sure of his victory. Even if the dragon hatchling was extremely talented, it was still just a dragon hatchling. As a race that measured their strength by age, the young dragon was even younger than the average lifespan of a human. How could it compare to an old mage such as himself? Tahir could not bear to kill the dragon hatchling, as it was an extremely special case. Through the use of his wind speak, Tahir had learned of how the dragon hatchling killed his companions. The dragon hatchling had tricked Carvella into thinking that her ballista had struck them, and it had caused Carvella to lower down her guard. As a result, she was scorched to death by a dragon breath. As for a heavy-armored warrior, Rafik, the young dragon was keenly aware that the ballista was capable of penetrating Rafik's defense. It had learned to operate the ballista in mere seconds. Moreover, its aim was so accurate. The ballista was one of the top inventions of mankind, a technology that dragons were not supposed to know of. Yet, the dragon hatchling had learned to use it in such a short span of time. Tahir felt that it was a pity to kill such the dragon hatchling, as he would rather take it in as his familiar or disciple. Therefore, he purposefully used lightning magic, a type of magic that red dragons were resistant against. He hoped to show the overwhelming difference in their strength, and he hoped that the dragon hatchling would obediently take up his prior offer. However, before the lightning arrow rain had ended, his surroundings had turned into black and white. Tahir looked around in surprise. This was clearly not the world he was familiar with. Where is this place? Wind spirits, answer me. Tahir continued to ask the wind spirits questions. However, the wind spirits there refused his question. The reason was that they were not familiar with each other, so they did not want to pay attention to Tahir. Tahir was stunned. Wind spirits from all across the continent were supposed to be familiar with his name. It was impossible for them to reject his questions. Lightning spirits, heed my call. Tahir reached out his hand again, hoping to get a reply from lightning spirits. Moreover, Tahir had the best affinity with the lightning element. If even the lightning element were to abandon him, then Tahir was equivalent to a basketball player who had lost his arm. With his weak body, Tahir was no different from an ordinary old man. Lightning spirits. Answer me. Tahir shouted again. The lightning spirits did not respond to him. Fire spirits. Surround me. Water spirits. Appear in front of me. Earth spirits. Support me. Tahir panicked and shouted out all the elementals. However, none of the elementals were willing to respond to him. How did this happen? Tahir fell down weakly and crumpled onto the ground. At this moment, one of the elemental spirits finally responded to him. We can't respond to you, Tahir. Because our master doesn't like you.